Okay then guys, let's start off the course by understanding what exactly is JavaScript. So JavaScript is nothing but a general purpose programming language which can be used in various fields like front-end development, game development, mobile app development, machine learning, API development, and robotics. It's literally everything that there is in a tech field, right? That means learning JavaScript is going to be one of the biggest things in your career because you can literally do almost everything that there is in a technology field, right? But JavaScript was not always like this. Initially, when it was created, it was only created for manipulating the DOM. Now, don't worry about understanding DOM right now because in future I'm going to be launching a complete DOM manipulation course. But for now, think of DOM as your HTML and CSS. Now I'm assuming that you might be a little familiar with HTML and CSS. So we know, right, that we use HTML CSS to create web pages like this, to create web pages and put content like images, text, audio, video, right? We use HTML and CSS to create site like this. Now on these sites, you see these dynamic things happening, right? When I click on this, the image changes, or maybe when I click on this, the slider works, all that stuff. Or maybe when you like hover somewhere, this new element appears which was not there. And when I go on data, you can see the data is changing, right? See that? So initially when JavaScript was created, the only intention of JavaScript was to do this, to basically make your web page dynamic and interactive, right? But now JavaScript is much more. So we're going to be talking about that in future. And initially when it was created, guys, the default running environment of JavaScript was only the browser. For example, just like when you want to write C language, you need to install C compiler in your computer so that it can support writing and executing C. If you want to run Java, right, you need JDK. So you have to install JDK in your machine. Just like that, the by default running environment or the running environment of JavaScript when it was created was only the browser. That means it cannot work without HTML, or it was not working without HTML. So if you want to write JavaScript, browser was the only place. So you have to create a HTML page and then connect your JavaScript with that so that your JS can work. But then in 2009, something called as Node.js got developed. So Randall, basically a developer, thought, okay, if JavaScript has all the features like variables, arrays, loop, like a normal programming language, so why to keep it limited only for the browser? Because he saw that, okay, JavaScript is performing DOM manipulation, that's great, but it is also having features like variables, arrays, loops, etc. And it is really, really good looking and like what do you say, proper language. So why not take it outside the browser so that we can use it for n number of purposes? So he created Node.js. So depending on Chrome's V8 engine, he created something called as Node.js, a software that you install in your PC. So basically it gives you a runtime. So once you install Node.js in your PC, you're basically installing a JavaScript running environment. Just like C compiler for C, just like JDK for Java, Node.js is nothing but a JavaScript runtime. So once you install it in your PC, you can write JavaScript anywhere because Node.js will support its running. So now you no longer need HTML pages to run JavaScript. But in this course, we are primarily focusing on learning JavaScript as a programming language. We are not learning DOM manipulation. We are not learning how to create APIs or how to do machine learning because it is the starter course. So we are only going to learn JavaScript as a programming language and we'll see all the features, almost all the features that there is in JavaScript. Once you understand this, then you can choose any field from this and you can simply go ahead in that. If you want to do front-end development, surely you can go ahead. If you want to do API development, so the course that I'm creating here is basically to understand all the fundamentals of JavaScript and not depending on anything. Once you learn that, then you can easily select in which field you want to go, and then you can simply go ahead and start learning JavaScript related to that. But this course is very, very important if you want to go in any of these fields. Okay, so that's it, guys. That's what we're going to do. I hope you have understood what exactly is JavaScript. Now then, let's move ahead. Okay, before we move ahead, one more thing. As I said, we are not learning anything like DOM manipulation or anything from this. We are learning JavaScript as a core language. Right? So right now what we'll be doing is we'll be using the browser to run our JavaScript. Now I can also install Node.js in my PC and then start running it, but it might be a little difficult for beginners to understand. So that's why what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the old technique. So basically we'll be having an HTML page, but we are not going to do any kind of DOM manipulation. We'll be just using the HTML page to connect JavaScript so that we can run JavaScript in the browser. That was the default running environment before Node.js, right? So we'll be using that. But understand guys, whatever JavaScript you write for the browser-based environment, it will work for your Node.js environment or in any other environment, because JavaScript as a programming language is same in all the environments, right? So let's go and let's start. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm simply going to create a new folder in which I'll keep all my files. So I'm calling it modern.js, right? And the editor that I'm going to use is basically one of the most famous editors going on in the world right now, that is VS Code. So I'm really hoping that you might be already familiar with it, but if you don't have it, but again guys, if you want to use any other editor, it's completely fine. You can go for Sublime Text, brackets, or whatever you'd like, but in this case I'm going for VS Code. If you want to download it, you can simply search for VS Code download, and you can get on this first link, and depending on your PC now, you can simply go ahead, download and install it. That's how simple it is. Now then, let's go and let's open that folder in here. So open folder, we created it on desktop, which is this one, modern.js. Here we go. Now as I said guys, we are running JavaScript inside the browser, so we need a HTML file for it. So right click, or not right click, just click on this, and I'm creating a file and I'm naming it index.html. Here we go. Now I want my HTML code, boilerplate code. So here we go. Let me remove all of this stuff. I don't need it right now. And let me just change the title to modern JavaScript. And let me also put a dummy content in here, just a simple h1, in which I'm again going to write modern JavaScript, because mostly we are not performing anything related to HTML, so we are never going to do anything inside the body, so don't worry about that. I'm just putting this for some kind of show, that's it. No class actually, just giving a direct style and a simple font family of CJUI. Okay, that's it, a simple page. Now let's run it. Now guys, again you can use a live server to run it, it's completely fine, but for now I'm simply copying the path of this file and going in my browser, and here we go, simply running it. Okay, simple modern JavaScript is here. Now since I said that I'm not going to do anything on the web page because I'm not performing any kind of HTML, CSS or DOM manipulation, so I need a place where I can see my output. So for that guys, you have the developer tools. Just right click on the browser, click on inspect, and then here you see this console window, right? This is the place where you can output everything. So console is nothing but, you can think of it like command prompt of your browser. So any problems that you face in future, or maybe you're making some mistake in JavaScript code or something like that, the errors will pop up here, right? You can also write JavaScript at this place directly and it will also work. And for now, whatever code we write, the output of that code we can see here. If in future we do DOM manipulation, we're going to be doing everything here, because here I'm going to create images, audio, video, and I can simply use JavaScript to manipulate those or move those or animate those. But right now we are not doing all that stuff. We simply want to write programs and see basic outputs. So for that purpose, we can simply use console. But console is very powerful guys. As you become good developers, this will be a very, very helpful tool. Right now we are simply using it for output. Okay, that's it. Now then, if you want to start writing JavaScript, just go in your body, and at the end, remember guys, at the end, now a lot of people, okay, first of all, let me show you. At the end, you have to use a script tag. Okay, now this says that this is the area where you can start writing JavaScript. That's it. Now a lot of people also put script in head. Okay, so you can also put it, it's completely fine, but it's just that it's not a good practice. Why? I'll tell you, because in this case, let's say in future you're performing DOM manipulation. So what will happen is your script will load first and then your HTML will load. So you're performing DOM manipulation here. You're writing the code of HTML manipulation here. That means the code of manipulation is loading first, but the HTML elements are loading later. You want your HTML elements to load first and then the manipulation should happen, right? That's why we always try to keep script at the end. So all my HTML elements will go here, whatever it is, and script will be at the bottom. But right now we are not dealing with it. So in this case, it's fine if you keep it in head or bottom, it doesn't matter. But Again, it's a good practice to always keep it at the bottom in your body. And now here I can do whatever I want. So let me teach you how to print something in the JavaScript, because that's what you learn in any other language, right? The first thing, how to print something. So JavaScript has an inbuilt object. Now guys, in the starters, there are few terms that I'm going to be using that you might not understand if you're a very beginner, but don't worry. In maybe next 20-30 minutes, I'll be making you clear about objects, arrays, everything. But for now, JavaScript has an inbuilt object which is called as console. Now this console is nothing but, you can think of, it works with this area, console area. So this console object is made to work with this area. Okay, simple. And then it has a function called as log, which is simply a printing function. And now I can simply go ahead and put hello everyone, something like that. And if I just save it and come here and refresh the page, you can see your output, hello everyone. And it also tells you, okay, the line of code that is executing this or giving this output is written on index.html page number 16, right? So that's how it is. And you can see one more thing, right? In other languages, you need to put a semicolon, but here it's fine. So semicolon in JavaScript is not mandatory, but personally, I like to always put it because I also work with some other languages. So if I don't keep a habit of putting semicolon, I might forget it in some other languages as well. That's why I personally put it. Now throughout the course, sometimes I'll put it, sometimes I'll not, but don't worry, it's not mandatory, but I personally put it. Now it can be your personal choice if you want to put it or not. So that's how you print it, guys. And you can literally print anything. So whatever you want. So let's say 24, you can also print a number. And you can see when you print a number, it gets displayed in blue. That means on console only you can identify which is a string and which one is a number. You can also print any Boolean value like true or false, right? Whatever you'd like. See that? So that's how it is, guys. You can use console.log like this. Now don't worry, in the future, in the next part of these videos, I'm going to be talking about variables, objects, arrays, everything, and we'll be seeing a lot of different uses of this console.log. So don't worry about that. You'll be seeing all that stuff in some time. Now guys, this is one way of writing JavaScript with HTML. There is one more way. Now why do we need another way? Because let's say you're actually doing DOM manipulation. So in that case, what can happen is, you might be writing a lot of HTML elements, maybe 100, 200 HTML elements to create a web page like this, right? To create a web page like this, you might be writing 200, 300, 1000 lines of HTML code. And in that case, for manipulation, you're also writing 400, 500 lines of JavaScript code. So your HTML code and your JS code is inside a single page. That will make the code very messier, and you have to move up and down, scrolling the page to do anything. So if your code gets bigger, what you can do is you can write JavaScript separately. So I'm going to comment this right now. Okay, and if you don't know how to comment code, it's simply control/. So select the code, control/ for commenting and control/ for uncommenting. So I'm commenting this. That means this code will be ignored. So there is no output for that code right now. Here we go. And now, as I said, I'm going to be writing JS in a separate file, so that my HTML file will be different and my JS file will be different and my code will look better. So now I'm going to create one more file. You can create it inside a folder as well, but I'm directly creating here. Name it anything you like. So you can call it, let's say, script, and then dot extension will be JS. Now this file is completely dedicated to JS. So you don't need to write any kind of script tag or something like that here. You can simply go ahead and write your code, right? So I can simply say copy this, paste here. Now let's see if this is working. Let's see if this is working. As you can see, nothing is working, because if it was working, these things should be printed. But why it is not working, let me tell you. Because right now this HTML page doesn't know who is my JavaScript page, or the JavaScript page doesn't know who is my HTML page. So you need to create a connection between them. So to create a connection, again, come at the bottom and use a script tag. But this time you're not going to write anything inside it. This time you're simply gonna use script tag to connect both the pages or files. So you have to use a src attribute that stands for source, and then /, because it's in the current folder, path of your JS file. Now again, save it, and voila, you have your output. So that's how you can write external JavaScript. When you write JavaScript in a separate page, it is called as external JavaScript. When you write JavaScript inside a single HTML page, it is called as internal JavaScript. Now guys, in this case, I'm not going to be writing a lot of HTML. So in my case, my script will be always small. That's why I am simply going to not do it this way. So I'm going to be removing all this stuff, but I hope you have understood that you can do this as well. So I'm going to be simply deleting this file for now. And I'm simply going to stick to internal JavaScript right now. So the same output should be there. And here we go. So guys, that's how you start with JavaScript. Now in the whole course, I'm going to be writing all my scripting in here. So variables, arrays, objects, looping functions, array functions, generators, everything that I'm going to teach you, I'll be writing it here. So I'm really excited, guys. I hope you are excited as well. And also, after watching this course, let me know in the comments how it was. Did you like it or not? And what other courses you want me to make, because I'm coming up with a synchronous JavaScript crash course. I'm coming up with a React crash course. And I'm also coming up with, what do you say, complete JavaScript DOM manipulation course. So I can't wait to show you all of that. So please let me know in the comments what else do you want, and did you like this crash course or not. So enjoy it, guys. See you in the next part. Okay guys, in this part we are going to be discussing about variables and operators, two of the most important topics in any programming language. So let's start off with variables. So what exactly is a variable in JavaScript or in general? So variable is nothing but something that is used to store data of the program that it is going to use in future for calculation or maybe for some displaying purposes. So a lot of times in your program, you want to use data for calculation, or maybe you're getting some kind of user input and you want to calculate that, or maybe you're getting your data from internet and you want to do something in that data. So whatever you want to do, you need to store that data somewhere. So variables provide a way to store data that you can access at any point of time and use it. Right? So let's see how do you actually create a variable in JavaScript. So it's really very simple. To create a variable in JavaScript, you have to use a keyword called as var that tells JavaScript that it is going to be a variable. And then you have to give it a name. That name is how you're going to identify that variable. So give it a name, or you can also call it an identifier. So in this case, I'm just calling it, let's say, num. And then equal to some value. So something like 23. So now guys, you have created a variable, and the name of that variable is num, and the value inside that variable is 23. Let's also try to understand what actually goes on inside. So let's say, now you know, right, your program is getting written in a computer, and all the data that you see in your computer is stored somewhere in the memory, right? So I've created a very dummy diagram here. So let's say this is your program, and you're creating a variable in here called as a, and you're giving some value like 23. So what actually happens that inside this program tells the computer memory, okay, so create a memory block for me where you're going to store this 23. So this program internally goes and accesses a memory block and reserves a memory block for this value. So in that memory block, this 23 is stored. Okay, and if you want to ever access this memory block in your program, or if you want to get this data from this memory block and you want to use in your program, you have to use this identifier. That's why you give name. So as soon as you do this, internally a memory block is registered, and inside that this value is stored. And to access this value or to use this value, you have to always use this identifier. That's it. This memory location is nothing but your variable. And why it is called as a variable? Because this data can change. In future, I can go and I can say a equals 45. So initially it was 23, then in future I say a equals 45. So this 23 will change to 45. So I can change it at any point of time, and if I want to access, I'm simply going to use this name to access this data. So that is what actually happens behind the scenes. So now let's actually go and let's use it in few cases. So now guys, I have created a variable, and let's see how can we access it. So very simple. Let's say I just want to print it. So I'm simply going to do console.log. So I'm right now showing you how to print it on the console. So here we go. Let's go ahead and let me just remove my old output. Okay, fine. Now let's just print this num. And now you will see, here we go, 23, right? And just like that, I can create n number of variables. So I can call var num1. You can give any name guys to a variable, but always remember that never start your variable name with a number, and never give any spaces. For example, let's say if I want to create a variable name first name, so I can't do this first space name. This is not allowed. Either go like this, but in this case you will say, okay, fine, my readability is not looking good because I want this name to be a little separate. So in that case, you can use underscore. That's allowed. Or you can use camel casing. So start every other letter with capital letter. So you can do that to make it look a little better. And your variable can literally store anything. So I can just go ahead and I can also print first name. So here we go. Now, if you're coming from some other languages, you might know that in all the other languages, you have to specify something called as a data type. That means while creating variable, you have to specify what kind of data that variable is going to store. So you need to specify, like if you want to store a number, you have to specify integer, then your variable name, and then 2. Or if you want to store a string, you have to specify string, and then a variable name, and then some value. So in other languages, you have to specify the type before you create a variable. But in JavaScript, you don't need to do that, because in JavaScript, when you create a variable, we don't specify typing, because JavaScript is a loosely typed language. It does not follow strict typing. So you can create a variable by just using a var keyword. And if you just hover on it, you can see internally it is getting the type. So in JavaScript, the type of the variable depends upon what kind of data you pass into it. So see, in this case, I passed 23 in num, so you can see num is type number. Here you can see first name is type string. So JavaScript is like dynamically typed, or you can also consider it as loosely typed language. Okay. So that's it, guys. That's how you simply create a variable, and that's how you use it. Now let's see how to print it. Like, what if I want to print something like the name is Saurabh, let's say. So let's see how to print string and variable together. So in this case, now normally I know that I can simply do this in console.log. I can just go ahead and just put this, the name is. So in this case, this string or hard-coded string will be printed, right? The name is. Correct. But what if I also want to print my variable with it? So can I just go here and inside the double quote, I can pass first name. Can I do that? Let's try. No, because whatever is inside double quotes, it is considered as a normal string. So what if I want to print my variable? In that case, guys, you can use something called as concatenation. So what you have to do is, first of all, understand you cannot write your variable inside double quotes, because it will be considered as a normal string. So you have to always write it outside. But then if I write it outside, it gives me this error that, okay, comma is expected because I cannot put string and variable together. So what you have to do, guys, you have to concatenate them. Either put a comma so that console.log treats this and this as a different things. So this is one data and this is second data for our console.log, right? You can see this. It looks fine, but understand, guys, this console.log thinks that this is one data and this is other data. So what if I want to print it as a single data? So in that case, don't use a comma and use plus. Now this plus, what it does is it concatenates or joins this string and whatever data this variable is giving. And in this case, here we go. The name is Saurabh. Now it might look very similar, but let me show you what actually we are doing. So let's say in future, I have one more variable and let's call it str. And I want to store the name is Saurabh inside that. So there I cannot use comma, right? There I cannot go ahead and write the name is comma first name. I cannot do something like this, because it will be like I'm trying to store two different values inside this str. So here you have to go for a plus. And now if I want, I can simply go ahead and print my str. Str is nothing but a variable which is holding this string plus this. That means this is this string as a whole. So the name is Saurabh. So that's how you can concatenate. That's how you can join variable and string together. But joining your variable and string together using your plus is now a little old fashioned, because this doesn't work if you have like a lot of variables and you're going to write multiple lines of string. So in this case, the new trick is, rather than using double quotes, start using backticks. Okay. And if you use backticks, the benefit that you get is you no longer have to use plus and double quotes, because what happens in that approach is, let me also show you the drawback of that approach. Let's say I have var first name Saurabh and let's say last name I put as Gupta, and now I want to print the name is Saurabh Gupta. So I have to do something like this. First, the name is a string, so the name is. Now I have a variable, so I have to go plus first name. Now I again want some space, so I'm going to use a string for that. So here we go, some space. And again want a variable. So again I have to go ahead and write. So you can see a lot of pluses, double quotes, opening, closing, and we are bound to make a lot of mistakes in this. And also when it becomes multiple lines, it will be very, very tough. So you can do the exact same thing by using backtick. Now guys, backtick is nothing but it's a key. It's just like in most of the keyboard, it's just above your tab key and just behind your one numeric key. So backtick, and then you can simply go ahead and write the name is, and in backticks, to specify variables, you don't have to use plus and all that stuff. Just use dollar curly braces wherever you want the variable. No need to open close the backtick again and again. No need to use plus, and just mention first name and then give a space, dollar. Wherever you have a variable, just dollar curly braces. That is what you call as an EL. This is what you call as an expression language or expression. That's it. And it is much more better way of doing it. So now you can see the output is still same. The name is Saurabh Gupta. And the best part is, now it doesn't matter in how many lines they go. It will still be fine without any error. You can see. Now those gaps are coming because of I've given these many gaps in the string. But the best part is I don't have to do that plus equal to all that stuff, which is very, very tough here, right? So no matter how many lines of string you have, it will be always fine because you just have to start it once and end it once. No plus, no double quotes, no opening, no closing. And whenever you feel like you want to print a variable, just pass dollar curly braces. And yes, if you want it, you can also directly do it inside the console.log. Why not? Just go ahead and just put it here. And you go. Still the same output. So initially I was storing it in a variable. Now I'm directly printing it. So guys, I hope now you've understood variables. It's nothing but, what do you say? It is nothing but it is used to store data in the program that you are going to use in future. So you can see I'm storing this string in this variable, this string in this variable, and I'm using it. Just like that, I can store numbers, and I can also go ahead and, what do you say? Use it also for some calculation. Let me show you that as well. So let's say I have some number like let. In this case, I'm not using let because in future I'm going to show you how like when to use let and why to use let, because let is a new way of creating variable, guys. Okay, let me show you that right now. So guys, in JavaScript, you have one more way of creating variable by using let, because var is now getting deprecated. It's the old way of doing it. The new way is using let. But now you might ask, like, then why both of them are working and why are we using let? Like, why did they have to remove var and give you let? So don't worry, guys, in a separate section I've explained the proper difference between let and var and why you should use it. But for now, let me just tell you that you can also use let to create variables. Okay, but in a different part I have explained why to use let and what are the benefits, so don't worry about that. So let me comment this stuff for now, and let's go ahead. Let num equals, let's say, 23, and let num2 equals 56. And now if I want, I can perform some kind of operation. So like let result equals num plus num2. And now if I want, I can print the result, or like I can print the, or in this case, let's use a backtick. The addition is dollar curly braces result, right? And that's it. It should give me my output. Let's see. And here we go. The addition is 79. You know, right? We can also do it in this way, that I can use double quotes, but in that case, I have to go for plus. Right? So you can see I have created a variable storing two numbers, and I'm calculating the results, and that's it. And now, guys, we have numbers here. We also have booleans, like we can also store true and false. We can also store decimal values. It's completely fine. All of that is fine. You never have to specify any type, just like other languages, either var or let. And don't worry, in future I have talked more about it in the separate part, so don't worry about that. You will see that. For now, just focus on how to create variables. Right? So guys, that's it. That's all about variables. Now let's move ahead to the next topic, which is very, very important, and again, very, very easy. That is operators. So what are operators in JavaScript, or in general in any programming language? So in any programming language, operators are something that help you to perform operations. Okay? Just like this plus. It is helping you perform an addition operation, right? So in a programming language, there are a lot of times where you want to perform calculations, computations. So to perform all of these things, a lot of operators are given to you. This plus in one example of that, this equal to is another example of that. These two things are operators which are helping you to perform some kind of operation. So in programming language or in JavaScript, you have a lot of operators. And based on what those operators do, they are divided into certain categories. So let's see how many categories we have and how to work with these operators. Okay, so the first category that you have is binary operators. Now when I say binary operators, that basically means operators that work with two operands. When I say two operands, that means operators that work with, what do you say, two values or two variables. Like in this case, you can see this plus is working with two operands, num and num2. So this whole thing is an operation. This plus is an operator, and this num and num2 are operands. So basically, operator is performing the operation, and it is performing it on the operands, on some values, on some data. So that data becomes operand, right? So whatever operators need two operands to perform operation are called as binary operators. And again, there are a lot of binary operators. So again, they are divided into categories. So the first category is, and guys, don't mind my spelling, I am very bad at spellings. So the first category is arithmetic operators. Okay, operators that are used for calculation. For example, this plus, minus, multiplication, division, modulus. These are all the example of arithmetic operators. So let me just take this example down and let me show you how this work. Okay, now you have already seen the example of plus, right? Okay, so let me show you minus. So you know, right, what minus will give you. Now these are some basic operators. You can see minus 33 because 23 minus 56 minus 33. Then just like that, I can use multiplication. You can see 1288. I can use division. Whatever the result is, it will come. You don't have to worry about it. You can see the division value. And I can also use modulus. Now what exactly is modulus? If you're coming from some programming background, you might be knowing it, but don't worry, I'll tell you. So let's say I have 25, or maybe let's just say I have 10 and I have 3. Now understand, guys, that modulus is also division. This modulus is also division, but understand that when you use slash for division, it gives you the quotient, and when you use modulus for division, it gives you the remainder. So in this case, 3 divided by 10, so 3 3s are 9, remainder is 1. So in this case, you should get result as 1, and here we go, 1, because 1 is the remainder. So slash gives you the quotient and modulus gives you the remainder. That's it. So guys, that is arithmetic operators, one of the easiest operators there is. Okay, now let's move ahead and let's talk about the next set of operators, that is called as relational operators, or you can also call them as comparison operators. Okay, these operators are mainly used for comparing data or relating data. Okay, and the output of this operator, the output of the operation performed by these operators is always only two things, either true or false. Because see guys, you're not performing any calculation, you're simply comparing data. So it's either going to be, okay, fine, the comparison is successful or it is not successful. So it's always going to be true or false, a Boolean value, right? So the operators that are there in this category are greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, right? And then not equal to, and finally you also have equal to, right? So let me show you how these work. So let's say I have some variables again. Okay, let's just take this example. I think we can use it again and again a lot of times, right? Cool. Or actually I can use the whole thing. Why am I just using the half thing? Let's do that. Okay, so I can also store the result, right? That will be much more better. So let me just show you that. Okay, so now let's use this. Let's use greater. So now what I'm doing is I'm checking num is greater than num2. So if I perform this operation, it will check, is it correct? So num is 10 and num2 is 3. So I'm writing 10 is greater than 3. So what will this operation return? It's correct. 10 is greater than 3. So it should return true. So this result will hold true and it should give me true. And instead of addition, let me just write result. Okay, I think on top I wrote addition for subtracting operation, but I hope you understood. So here we go. The result is true. And guys, see, right now I'm writing it with a string. That's why it's coming like a string. If I don't write the result is, and if I just write result normally, the console treats it in blue, because now the console understands that it's a Boolean. When you put it in that backticks or double quotes, it also considers it as a string. Now it is considering it normal Boolean. So that's why the color is blue. Okay, that's it. So now, just like that, I can also use less than, which will definitely give false because 10 is not less than 3, right? And just like that, I can use greater than equal to. Now, greater than equal to means two conditions. Either it is greater than or it is equal to. So in this case, if I put 10 and if I put greater than, it should be false, right? Because 10 is not greater than 10, so it's false. But if I use greater than equal to, in this case, it means 10 should be either greater than num2 or num should be either equal to num2. So yes, num is not greater than num2, but num is equal to num2. So it should give me true. And just like that, you have less than equal to. You also have not equal to, which is simply for, what do you say? Here we go. You're getting false because they are equal, right? So I'm writing num is not equal to num2. If I have like 5 here, now it's correct. Yes, 10 is not equal to 5. So true. And to check if both are equal, you have to go for equal to equal to. Okay? So this equal to is actually for checking if both of them are equal or not. And now let's see. False, right? Because 10 is not equal to 5. If I just go 10, 10, in this case, it's true. Okay? So that's what relational operators are, guys, used for comparison of values, and it always gives you either true or false and nothing else. Now there is one problem in JavaScript, right? As I said, that JavaScript is a loosely typed language. That means typing is not like that important thing here, right? So in this case, if I go ahead and make this 10 a string, let's say like this. Now this is a 10, but it's a number. You can see that num is a number, right? But this is also 10, but it's actually a string. So what if now I compare them? What will happen? Let's see that. And it still gives me true. See that? That means for double equal to, this 10 and this 10 are equal, but it is actually wrong, right? Because this is a number and this is a string, so they should never be equal. First of all, comparison only should not be possible for a number and string. In other languages, it is not allowed, but in JS, it is allowed because JS is a loosely typed language. But they understood this problem, and after a while, they also introduced something called as identity operators, which are actually equal to, that is triple equal to, and not double equal to, right? So normally in all the other languages, this not equal to and equal to work fine. But in JavaScript, they are not working that great. That's why you have these set. Now instead of double equal to, just put triple equal to. Now this means it will check if they both are same, and it will also check if the type of both of them are same. Now in this case, you can see 10 and 10, but the types are not same, so it should give me false. And only if the type is same, then only it will give you true. So start avoiding not equal to and double equal to, and start using triple equal to and not double equal to if you're working with JavaScript. In all the other languages, in like not in all, but in all the main languages like Java and C++, you don't have these because there this works perfectly fine. But in JS, this doesn't work perfectly fine. That's why you have these. So whenever you feel like you want to perform some equality operation, always go for identity operator rather than this. Okay. Now then, guys, let's move ahead to the next operator category, that is logical operators. Okay. Now you might be remembering logics from your 12th standard, 10th standard, or in whatever grade you learned it, right? Remember that logic truth table where true and true is true, true and false is false, false or true is true. So these operators help you in that only, right? So let's say you have some comparisons or some conditions which is giving true and false, and you want to compute them as a whole. So in that case, you can always go for logical operators. So you have three main logical operators. You have AND, which is written as and, but it is considered as and then you have this, a pipeline operator, which denotes or, and then you have simply not. Now these are the three main logical operators. So let me show you that. So now, instead of like creating variables and then storing results and all that stuff, in this case, I'm simply going to write directly all the things in console.log, right? So I can do that. It's completely fine. So let's say I do 2 equal to 2. Now guys, it will definitely give me true. I know that because this comparison is going to give me true. Perfect. It's true. And now let's say I want to write one more condition. So let's say I'm going to write 4 equal to 4, something like that. So now I have one condition which will give me true, and I have one more condition which will give me true. But let's say I want to evaluate this whole condition as 1. So this is one condition, or comparison. This is second comparison. So I can use this in between them. So I can put and. Now this comparison will give it true. This will give us true. But to make the whole statement true, both of them should be true because this is and for and, true and true is true. So let's see if it is giving me true. Yes. But what if I make this condition false? Now see, this condition is true and this condition is false, or comparison is false. So this whole thing becomes false because true and false should become false. And here we go. But if I, instead of and, have a or here, then true or false is definitely true, right? So that's how your and or work. Now don't get confused because I have directly written all these things here. I can also show you it in this way. So let's say I have a variable called as num1, that is 34, and num2, or maybe just num, and something like this. Now let's say I want to write that give me true only if num is greater than 30 and less than 50. So how will you do it? You only want true if your num is greater than num1, or let's say num. So if you want true only if your num is greater than 30 and less than 50. So you have to write num greater than 30 and num less than 50. So now in this case it is 34, so it should definitely give me true, right? Here we go. But if it was 54, then now see the conditions. Is 54 greater than 30? Yes. So this is true. And is 54 less than 50? No, it's false. So true and false should become false. So this is where you can use this logical operators, where you have to write multiple condition to check for a range of values or something like that. So this is where these operators actually thrive. In this case, if I put or here, so this will give us true, and that is wrong because I wanted num should be greater than 30 and less than 50. So use them wisely, right? And now finally, you have this not. Not is simply like negation. If it is true, it will make it false. If it is false, it will make it true. For example, if I just do console.log not true. So not true is definitely false, right? So you can see it gives us false. And if I do not false, it will give us true. Now let me explain this with an example. Let's say you have a condition, right? You have a comparison that, okay, fine. Only if num is not 54, give me true. Only if num is not 54, give me true. So I can write num is equal to 54, right? And in the start, I know that this will give me true. So only if this is not true. So I can just simply apply not num equals to 54. So this should give me false because it is 54. So let's say I convert it to 44 and now it should give me true. Wait. Am I doing a mistake in the condition now? Let me just confirm. Num is okay. Wait, num a I forgot brackets. You have to put these brackets, guys. Very, very important. And I think that should be it. And here we go. So I forgot that brackets. So now not, so num equal to 54 will give us true, and not will make sure that it becomes false. So in this case, num is 44. So num is equal to 54. This will give us false because it is 44, and then not false should give me true. That means I'm confirmed that, okay, fine, num is not 54. But a better way of doing this is simply just using not equal to, right? It's also fine. So it's true. Check if num is not equal to 54. Yes, that's how you check it. So you still have this not. If you ever want to use it wisely, but that's it. It just converts true to false and false to true. It's just like a negation. That's it. Okay, I hope you have understood this much, guys. And finally, one more category in the binary operator, that is assignment operator, right? One of them you're using it already, that is equal to. So assignment operators are basically used to assign data to variables. So for example, when you do this, right, let num equals 45. This equal to right here is assignment operator. And that is why in comparison, they use double equal to and triple equal to, because single equal to was already engaged for assignment. That's why they never used single equal to for checking. Understand that? Okay, now then let's move ahead, guys. So this is one of the assignment operators, but there are more. You have equal to, which is the most common one. Then you have plus equal to, you have minus equal to, you have slash equal to, you have multiplied equal to, and you have modulus equal to. I'll explain you one of them, you'll automatically understand all the other. Okay, so let's say num is 45, right? So I can do this, num plus equal to 20. What this actually means is something like this, num equals to num plus 20. So this thing and this thing are exactly similar. So in this case, what's happening is num is initially 45, right? So num plus 20, that is 45 plus 20, which is 65, and again store it in num. That means now num should become 65. Let me show you that. So console.log num, and here we go. So this thing and this thing are exactly similar, still same output. So just like that, I can also use multiply equal to, which is nothing but num equals to num, that is 45 multiplied by 20. So whatever you get, here we go. Just like that, slash equal to, that is num equals to num slash 20. If I use modulus equal to, which will be num equals to num modulus 20, just like that. So remember this expression, guys. If something is looking like this, it basically means it is something like this. Okay, so these were the four main categories in the binary, guys. It is your arithmetic, then relational, and then you have finally logical. So you can see, right, arithmetic, relational or comparison, then you have your logical operators, and then finally you have your assignment operators. Okay, now binary is one of the categories. Let me talk about one more category which is very, very important, which you're going to see a lot of times, which is the unary category, unary operators. So guys, just like as I said, binary means operators which work with two operands. Unary means operator which work with only one operand. Now you might think, how is it possible? How can an operator only work with one operand? Let me show you that. So there are only two main operators in this, that is plus plus and minus minus, which are also called as increment and decrement operators. So let me show you that, right? So let's say I have a variable. So console, okay, let me first of all get a variable. So let's say a, which is initially 2, right? So if I go here and do console.log a plus plus, now you'll see initially a is 2, but I'm printing a plus plus. You are still getting 2. Why? So now let me give you a proper example. Like if it is plus plus, it was supposed to do something, right? But it didn't do anything. It simply printed 2. So what actually happened? Let me show you that. So let's say I do it like this, a plus plus. And now here I print just a. Now don't worry, we'll come back to that. But for now, so initially a is 2, and then I do a plus plus, and then I'm printing a. Now let's see what's happening with a. Now a is 3. So guys, what a plus plus does is, plus plus is nothing but an increment operator. It simply increments the value of the variable or increases the value of the variable by 1, and always by 1. Remember that. Plus plus will always increment the value of the variable by 1. But now I want to know what happened when I wrote plus plus here. Why it didn't happen? So to show you that, let me do this. Let me also create a variable called as b. Okay, so initially b is 0, and let's say a is 1, right? And now here we go. See guys, now what I'm doing is I created a is 1, b is 0, and then I'm doing b equals a plus plus. Now let me print both of them, a comma b. Now understand what will happen. You can see my a becomes 2, but my b is still 1. So what's actually happening? So my a was 1, b was 0 initially. Fine. Then I did b equals a plus plus. So what's happening is, when you apply plus plus after the variable, that means it is considered as post increment. That means in whatever operation it is, first what will happen is, first whatever value a was holding, initially it was 1, it will be transferred to b. So b becomes 1, and then a plus plus will happen, and then a becomes 2 because a was 1, and that's why you get a as 2 and b as 1. But if I want, I can also do plus plus a. Now this becomes pre-increment. That means in whatever operation this is happening, the first thing that will happen is increment. So in this case, a was 1. So first plus plus a will happen. So again, a will increment by 1. So a will become 2. And then the value of that a will go to b. So b will also become 2. And here we go. Now both are 2. So in post increment, the operation happens first and then the increment happens. In pre-increment, the increment happens first and then the operation happens. That's it. But mostly you're not going to use it like this. You're simply going to use it to increment the value of the variable. That's it. So just like this. you have a equals 1 and I want to increment the value, so I'll either do a plus plus, which will give me 3, or 2 basically because it's 1, or I do plus plus a, which will still give me 2 because it doesn't matter. Normally, if it is just like this, so post and pre doesn't matter. But if it's inside an operation, then post and pre matters, right? If it is normally using it like this, then it doesn't matter. And just like that, guys, you have minus minus, which simply does decrement by 1. So in this case, it was initially 1, then I did minus minus, that means it becomes 0. So that's it, guys. That's all about variables and operators for now, but we're going to talk about a lot of them in future. So I hope you have understood the whole concept of what is variable in JavaScript and what are operators and how they work. Okay, now we're going to use them a lot of times in this whole course. So thank you so much. See you in the next part. Okay then, guys, now let's see what are conditional statements in JavaScript. So first of all, in a very simple manner, conditional statements are nothing but something which help you to perform any operation based on some condition. Now when I say condition, condition can be also considered as a comparison. Now if you remember this last part where we learned about operators, you might have seen how we were comparing two data like this, right? So this thing right here is nothing but a comparison, and we know that it gives only two output, either true or false. Now based on this comparison, if you want, you can perform something. So if this becomes true, you want to perform something. If this becomes false, you want to perform something, right? So a comparison can also be considered as a condition because you're going to perform something based on this. That's why we can also call this a condition. So a conditional statement is nothing but that helps you to perform something based on a comparison like this. And in a program, there are a lot of times where you want to perform something based on a condition or a comparison. For example, let's say when you go on to sites and try to log in, right? So that site check if your username and password are correct, then only it lets you log in. Otherwise, it gives you a message that you're not authenticated or username password is wrong. Sometimes, let's say you go on some site and there it asks you for age, like, okay, fine, this site is only valid for like age above 18. So if your age is less, then it doesn't allow you. So these are very few examples, but almost everywhere in all the sites, everywhere in all the applications, conditions are very, very important. That's why let's learn how to write conditional statements, how to perform something based on condition or comparison. So let's go, guys. Now we already know how to write comparisons, right? It's nothing but a comparison of two variables. We have already seen that how to use relational operators and logical operators to form conditions or comparisons that give you true or false. Now based on that, we want to do something, and to do that we have to use something called as conditional statement. Now let's see how to write it. So the most famous keyword that we will use to write a condition is this if keyword. So let's see how to write it. So the syntax or the way you which you write is if, and here goes your comparison or condition, whatever it is, and then here goes your code. Now understand, guys, that this code will only execute if the comparison or condition that you have mentioned here is true. So that's how a if block works. If this condition or comparison is true, this block will be executed. Otherwise, this block will be skipped and whatever is after that, it will get executed. Let me show you some example. So let's say I have a variable again, let's just call it num, or you can now let's call it age, something like that. And let's say age is initially 15. Okay. Now let's say if age is greater than, let's say 20, something like that. So I'm going to do a simple console.log. So console.log, let's say you are allowed. Now, in the place of this console.log, it can be some other code. It can be some kind of checking code, calculation. It can be whatever it is. Like you can put whatever code you want inside this block. But right now, it's just you are allowed. So now, if age is greater than 20, then only you're allowed will print. Otherwise, this block will be skipped if this condition goes false. And let me just also print something outside, which will definitely execute because it is not depending upon the condition. Because whatever is depending upon the condition, it's inside the block. So let's just say I am always there. So like I will always execute because I'm just outside, right? It's not depending on anything. So let's see that, guys. And here we go. You can see I'm getting I will always execute. I didn't get this because age is 15 and 15 is not greater than 20. Now if I make it 25, then you will see, here we go. Now you get you are allowed, and this is definitely going to get, right? So that's how you simply write a condition, guys. If this condition, then simply go ahead, and if it is true, then execute this. But what if I also want to perform something if this condition is false? Now you may say, okay, this is getting executed even if this is false. This is basically, no matter what happens, I'm going to execute. What if you specifically want to perform something when this condition is false? So for that, you have a else keyword, which will always go with a if only. Please guys, never write anything in between if and else. If and else are supposed to be go together. Either it's only if, and if this is if and else, then they are supposed to like go together. Okay. So let's just write console.log you. Again, you can write any code here, but right now I'm just writing you are not allowed, something like that, right? Now let's see if it is working. So now in this case, you should get you are allowed because 25 is greater than 20. So let's see that. And here we go, you are allowed. But what if I now make it 15 again? Now you'll see I'm getting you are not allowed, and this is definitely there because it's outside. So that's how you write a if and else, guys. Now let's say you want to write a condition where you want to check something like this. If age is between 20 to 50, then only true should be given, and then only this should execute. Now we have already learned how to use logical operators in this case. So we can use that now. Age should be greater than equal to 20. That means it should be greater than equal to 20. That means either 20 or greater. And age should be less than equal to 50. That means now age can be either 20 or greater, and it can be less than or equal to 50. And then it will be allowed. So basically here we go. You're not allowed because it is 15. If I make it 60, in this case, is 60 greater than equal to 20? Yes, true. But it's 60 less than equal to 50? No, false. So true and false will becomes false. And now you'll still get you're not allowed. So to be allowed, you have to be between 20 to 50. So I can make it 40. And here we go. So see, remember that while we were learning operators, I told you that we can use and or when you have multiple conditions and you want to evaluate that whole thing as a whole. So here we go, you can use it here. If I use a or here, then if any one of it is true, this will be true. So if I just make it 60, I know that this will become true. This is false, but this is true, and true and false is true. So you will get you are allowed. So that's the case. You can see that, right? You are allowed. Okay, so but in this case, I need an and. That's it. So you can also specify multiple conditions in one line in a if. So whatever we learned while operators, how to write comparisons in different ways, we can write all of that inside if. Okay, so that's how it goes. Now what if someday I have multiple conditions? Like right now in this case, okay, there is only one condition. Okay, either it's true, so do this, or it's false, so do this. What if I have like, if this is the condition, do this, otherwise this is the condition, do this. What if I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 conditions? What if I have a lot of conditions? In that case, because see, this statement is only for one condition. Okay, one condition, if it is true, do this, otherwise do this. So for multiple conditions, you can go and use something called as multiple if statement, or it is also called as if else if statement. Now whatever name you want to give it, you can give it. I normally call it multiple if because of multiple conditions. So let's see how to do it. So guys, very simple. Let's say I have a variable called as let grade. Okay, something like this, let grade, and let's say I put it as 67. Okay, so now I want to check if grade is from 70 to 100, I want to give A. So I will write if grade is greater than equal to 70 and grade is less than equals 100, then I want to log A grade. Now the next condition is if grade is greater than equal to 60 and less than 70, then B grade. So what I can do is now I want to write one more condition, guys. If I write else, this means that okay, if this is not true, then directly do this. But I want to write one more condition. So for that, I have to go and write else if. And then here I can also write a condition. So I can write if grade is greater than equal to 60 and grade is less than, equals, or just put less than 70, because see, this starts from grade greater than or equal to 70. That means this starts from 70. So I need to go less than 70. If I put less than equal to 70, this will be a problem, because here also I'm doing equal to 70, here also I'm doing equal to 70. So that will be a problem, right? That's why less than 70. And then simply console.log b grade, something like that. And then I can again go and write else if, let's say final one is grade greater than equal to 45, and now you can add as many levels as you want, but in this case I'm just going to keep it very simple. So grade less than 60, something like that. And then console.log, let's say C grade. Okay. And finally, if all of them go wrong, all the conditions, then you can at the end have a simple else in which you can write console.log, let's say failed, something like that. And now this will work. So right now you can see it is 67, so it lies in this range. So I should get B grade. Let's see that. And here we go. You can see you got B grade. If I make it like 77, then I should get A grade. If I make it like, let's say 45 or maybe 47, then I should get C grade. And if I just go below that, let's say 37, so I should get failed. So now guys, that's how you can write a multiple if statement. Now one really important thing to understand that guys, if the first condition is true and that block is executed, all the other blocks will not be executed, because this whole thing is a single multiple if statement. This whole thing is considered a single big block. Okay, so this is a single statement. That's why if the first condition is true, this block executes and all the other blocks are skipped. If the first condition is false, then it goes to the next block. And if this is true, this is executed and all the others are skipped. So that's how this works. Now a lot of people say that why to write multiple if? I can also write this, right? If, then if, then if, like this. But in this case, guys, understand that then this becomes a different block, this becomes a different block, this becomes a different statement or different block. So in this case, this will also get executed, this will also get executed, this will also get executed. That means even if this is correct, since this is a separate statement, it will get executed, and since this is also a separate statement, it will get executed. So that's a problem. Like, you know that it's going to be correct and it's going to be printing this, and all the other ones are not correct, but even then they're all going to execute and use your CPU. That's basically bad performance. That's why you should write it like this properly. Okay, because now this whole thing is a single statement. Okay, now then I'll give you one more last conditional statement. That is one of my favorites. I use it a lot. That is the switch case. Okay, so switch case is a lot similar to multiple if, but understand guys that in a if statement you can specify a range of values, like from 45 to 60, from 60 to 70, from 70 to 100, right? But in switch case we never specify a range like this. In switch case we only specify a single check, like okay, either it's 70 or it's 80 or it's 90 or it's 20 or it's 1 or it's 2. That's why it's called as a switch case. It only works for like, okay, either this value or that value or this value, like switch to this, switch to that, something like that. It's not for a range of values. So I can do, let me first explain you, let me first show you, then you'll understand it in a better way. So let's say I have a variable called as status, something like that, status, okay, and I give it 2. So let's say if status is 1, that means let's say software developer, junior software developer. If status is 2, senior software developer. If status is 3, project manager, something like that. Okay, so switch, then pass your variable that you want to check inside this. So status. Okay, and then inside switch you create cases. So I'll write case 1. Now understand guys, case 1 means if the status value is 1. Case 1 is not like, okay, this is the first case. I can also write case 2, case 100, doesn't matter, it's up to me. So case 1 means if the value of status variable is 1, then what should we do? So in this, now again guys, you can do any code if you want, but I'm just doing console.log, let's say junior dev. Then I can just go ahead and write case 2. Now again guys, don't think that I'm writing it in sequence. It's like this. I can write case 19, I can write case 21, 29, whatever I want. Okay, it's just I'm just doing 1 2, so don't think that it's always like this. It's always going to be going in sequence, because a lot of people think that case should always start from 1. It's up to me. This is not 1 2 numbering. This is basically, if the value of status is 1, do this. If the value of status is 2, do this, something like that. So console.log, let's say senior dev, and let's say case 3 console.log, let's say project manager. And if in any case the status doesn't match any of the cases, then for that, just like in multiple if you have else, here you have something called as a default case, which works exactly like a else. So console.log get out, something like that. You're not a worker. That's it, something like that. So now in this you can see status is 2, right? So first it will come to this case. It will check, is it 1? No. Skip this block. Is status 2? Yes. Execute this. So that's what's going to happen. Now let's see if it is actually working like this. So save it, execute, and here we go. You get senior dev, you get project manager, and you also get out. Why is this happening? Let's try to understand. So what is happening actually here is, first it checks, okay fine, status is 2. Is it 1? No. Skip it. Is it 2? Yes. Senior dev. So wherever the case gets correct, whatever case is correct, that case block is executed, and followed by that all the other cases are also executed. That is a by default behavior of switch case. Whatever case is correct, that case block and all the other blocks are also executed with that. That is what we call as fall out in switch statement or fall through in switch statement. To avoid it, what you can do is in every block just add a break keyword. So what will happen, and guys please add it at the end only. Now in default you don't need to add a break keyword, because default is the last case. If this is executing, then there is nothing after it. So now what break will do is, let's say now in this case again, case 1, is it matching? No. Skip this block. Case 2, is it matching? Yes. Then execute this, and this break will make sure that this switch statement breaks. It doesn't execute anymore. So all the other blocks will not execute now. That's why it's really important to add break after in every block of switch case. Just don't add it in the default because it is last. So now here we go, senior dev, and just like that, if I make it 3, I should get project manager, and if I make it like something that's not there, I should get out. Simple. So that's how switch case work. Now guys, understand that I can write this exact same thing using if. I can go and write like this, right? If status is equal to 1, junior dev. Else if, right? I can write like this, status is equal to 2, senior dev. I can do all that stuff. So you may ask, sir, if I can do it, if I can do all these things with if and else or multiple if, why do I need switch? So understand guys, switch is specifically made for this, and switch is a lot faster than a multiple if statement, because if is made for range checking, mostly for this, right? So by default, if statements check a lot of things. That's why they are little slower than switch cases. So if I just want to do a simple operation like checking 1, 2, 3, and if I do it in if, it will make my operation little slow. That's where you can simply use switch, because switch is specially made for this. Switch is a lot faster than if statements. Okay, so for these kind of things, always go for switch. That is one of my suggestions. Okay, so that's it guys. That's how you write all the conditional statements. So now you know how to write a single conditional by if, then you can also write if and else, then you can write multiple if, and then switch case. Now let me show you one more way of writing a simple conditional statement, that is by using one more category of operator that we have not discussed initially, but we're going to be discussing it now, which is called as ternary operator. Now if you remember, right, we talked about binary operators which work on 2 operands. We talked about unary operators which work on single operand, and now we have ternary operands which work on 3 operands. So let me show you how it works. So ternary operator is question mark colon. There's work with 3 operands. Okay, so it goes like this. First, now it is not for any kind of calculation. It is simply for writing a simple conditional statement. Okay, so if you ever need a replacement of if and else, like you're writing some normal if and else, you're not doing any big task, so you can ignore your big if and else and just write a ternary operator. Let me show you how. So first in this you write a condition, then question mark, okay, then expression 1, which will execute if the condition is true, colon expression 2, which will execute if the condition is false. So basically one way is doing this: if condition, then bracket your expression 1, else your expression 2. Now you can see, right, how big this looks. Just for writing a single normal condition, how big this looks, right? This whole thing looks very big. So if you ever want to just do a very normal thing using, now see again guys, if you want to write a lot of code inside if block, or if you want to write a lot of code inside if else block, then you have to go for if else only. But if you want to just write a normal single line code, or if you just want to return something out of it, then definitely the way to go is this, because it's a single line. It's like an alternative to if and else, which is basically this big. You can just write in a single line. Let me show you how. So let's say I have a variable, let num equals 5. And my condition is if num is less than 10, just print something. So num less than 10, question mark, console.log, let's say less, colon, console.log more, something like this. So now you'll see, this is the condition. If this condition is true, this will happen. If this condition is false, this will happen. Let's see if it is happening, guys. Here we go, you get less. And if the condition was false, let's say num is greater than 10, which is definitely false, I should get more. Understood, guys? So now I know I messed up this, maybe. Okay, that's fine, I think. Yeah, fine, more. But it's okay. So I hope you understood, right? Main thing is not actually thinking what is going on, but yeah, we are getting the proper output. That's it. Now in future, you can use it wisely. But this is not the only use, guys. For example, let's say I want to do this. Now let me first of all do this here. Okay. Let's say I wanted to do this, right? If num is less than 10, I have one more variable, let's say d, initially just a blank variable. So if num is less than 10, I want d to become 2. Just say like this, I want d to become 2. So I'll write like this, d equals 2. And if num is greater than 10, I want d to become 5. Just say we want to do something like this. I have a variable num and I have a variable d. If num is less than 10, I want d to become 2. If num is greater than 10, that means if this condition is false, I want d to become 5. Right? I can do the whole thing in just one line by doing this. Let d equals, and here I can just write 2 and 5, and this is the exact same thing that we are doing here. In this case, it's happening like this. Let d, so d is a variable, equals to, if this condition is true, this will give back 2. So we were doing console.log. Now we are not doing console.log. We're just writing 2. And if this condition is, let me just give some spaces so that you understand it in a better way. So if this condition is true, it will give back 2. If the condition is false, it will give back 5. And whatever it is giving will get assigned to d. So this is basically a very simple alternative of writing this much. See, it was this big. Now it is only this much, right? And yeah, I just have to create this variable because what will be checked if I don't have this at least? So now you understand, right, where you can use ternary operator. So if you want to just perform a normal if and else for some variable initialization, or let's say for some normal console.log, rather than writing it this big, you can just use your ternary operator. That's it, guys. So that's what a ternary operator is. Let me see if it is working, guys. Let me show you if it is working. So console.log d. Now in this case, num is 5. So 5 is greater than 10? No, false. So this will come in d. So d should also become 5. Let's see that. And here we go, d is 5. If this condition was correct, then d will definitely become 2. Perfect. So that's it, guys. That's how you write conditions in JavaScript, and they are everywhere. We have to use them a lot of times in future. So I hope you have understood it. Please practice it, and I'll see you in the next part of the video. Thank you so much. Okay, then guys, in this part, we'll try to understand one of the most important topics in almost any programming language, that is loops. So what exactly is a loop? So guys, a loop is nothing but something that repeats itself again and again. So it's like a block, right? And this block will execute again and again. And it's a by default feature. You don't do anything for it. So if this block is a loop block, it will repeat itself again and again. So what can be a benefit of such kind of thing? So if I want, I can put some task in here. Now this task can be anything. It can be a displaying purpose task. It can be like you're just printing some value, or you might be performing some internet request, or you might be writing some kind of logic code. This can be whatever you want. But this loop has a feature of repeating itself again and again. So whatever task I give it to the loop, it will also execute again and again, and that's a benefit. So anytime you have some kind of task that you want to perform 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, you can give it to the loop. So that's what happens, right? So again, if we go by the definition, it is something that repeats itself again and again based on a condition. So this is the important point. It executes based on a condition. That means just like if else, it also has a condition. And if that condition is true, loop will execute. If that condition is false, loop will not execute. That means if at any point of time I want to stop my loop, I can simply go ahead and make the condition false in some way. So this is not what exactly it looks like. So let's try to actually see what is the syntax of a loop. But I hope you have understood the basic definition, that it's nothing but something that repeats itself again and again, and I can put any task that I want to execute again and again inside a loop. So let's go and let's see how to write a loop. So now in JavaScript, guys, we have three keywords that help us to write a loop, which are while, then you have something called as do while, and then you have something called as for. These are the three basic loops available in JavaScript and also in all the other languages. So let's see all of them one by one, and how can we create something like this, something like a loop that executes itself multiple times using these three keywords. So let's go. Let's start with something called as while. And now guys, as I said, it is based on a condition. That means I also need a condition. And to make, we know, right, a condition is nothing but a comparison that gives us true and false. So for that, we need some kind of variable or data, because if there is no data, what are you going to compare, right? So for condition, we need comparison. So for that, we need some kind of variable. So let's go ahead and let's create let's say anything you can call it. So I'm just going to call it num. Let's say initialize with 1. Okay, now let's see how to write a while loop. So for that, guys, the syntax goes like this: while, then in here goes your condition. So whatever condition you have. So let's say I'm just writing num less than 10, right? So, and then inside this, I can put any code, whatever I want. So console.log, let's say I am in loop, something like this. And I can also put something outside, which is completely irrelevant to the loop. It's normal. It will execute normally. So let's just say outside loop. It can be any task, right? So outside task, something like that. So now see, guys, what will happen is when the program starts executing, first your num will get initialized with 1, and then it will check, okay, fine. While, check if num is less than 10. Yes, 1 is less than 10. Okay, the condition is true. So go inside. If the condition was false, then it will simply skip this block and go outside. So let me show you that first. Let's make the condition false in this case. So num is 11, right? And now the condition is false. So if the condition is false, it will simply skip this block and it will go ahead. So let's see if it is working. And you can see outside task. That means this never got executed. But if my condition is true, what will happen now? So yes, 1 is less than 10. Perfectly fine. Then I can simply go here. Okay, yes. Condition is true. Execute this block. So it will print I am in loop. But as I said, guys, what is the by default feature of a loop? It repeats itself again and again. So after executing this block, it will not go forward like a if statement. Now you know, right? In a if statement, if the condition is true, it executes the block and then it moves forward. But in a loop, it never does that. If the condition is true, it will execute this block and it will again go back up to the condition. That's how it naturally works. So it will again go back up and again check the condition. Okay, now check. Is the condition true? Yes, because num is still 1, so 1 is less than 10. Fine, then again execute the block. And again go back up. And again check. Is it still less than 10? Yes. Again come down. So in this case, you can see that num is never changing. So this loop will actually never end. And these kind of loops are also called as infinite loops. And the problem with this loop is if I run it, it will basically hang my browser because it will go on and on and on continuously and it will never stop. So just to stop it, I have to make sure that this condition becomes false at some point of time. Now it's up to me when I want to make this condition false. So for example, let's say I go in here and I just put num equals 11. So now what will happen, guys? Fine. Num is 1. Yes. 1 is less than 10. Yes. Execute the block. It will print I'm in loop and then num will become 11. And again, now since it's a loop, it will go back up. Because now last time I changed num to 11. So now it will check. Okay, is 11 less than 10? No. Condition false. Skip the loop. Go ahead. So now this will execute one time as I know. So let's go and check. Here we go. I'm in loop. Okay. Now then, what if I wanted to execute 2 times, 3 times, 4 times? So for that, guys, the only thing that you have to understand is how to make sure that your num from 1 reaches till 10 or 7 or 8 in intervals. Because in this case, it was 1, condition was less than 10, and I directly made it 11. But now it's up to me how I want it to reach 10. So I can also do this if I like. Num equals num plus 1. So now what will happen? Initially num is 1, correct. 1 is less than 10, yes. Execute the block, fine then. Print I'm in loop and then num equals num, that is 1 plus 1, so it becomes 2. And now the new value of num is 2. And again go back up, is 2 less than 10? Yes. Again come inside, execute this, and now last time num became 2. So 2 plus 1, so 3. So now num becomes 3. And just like that, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until it reaches 10, because at 10 it will stop. Let's say as soon as num reaches 9, now yes, 9 less than 10, yes, execute the code. Now then 9 plus 1, 10. So the new value of num is 10. It will go back up. Is 10 less than 10? No, false. So skip the block and just move ahead. Now let's see if it is happening. And if you go, you can see I am in loop is getting printed 9 times. But it's not that much understandable, right? So let's do one thing. Let's just print the variable num with it. So I can also print the variable inside, and now it will be more understanding. You can see I'm in loop 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9. So starts from 1, goes till 9, because at 10 the condition will become false. So that's how you can move up. Now we know that in this case I'm simply increasing num by 1. So there is also a better approach to it, as we have learned in the operators section, that if I just want to increment a number by 1, I can just do plus plus. And that's it. Same output. If I want to increment it by 2, I can also do this. Num equals num plus 2. Right? This will also be fine. See now? Then 1, then 3, then 5, then 7, then 9. Right? So that's how it works. Now we also know a better approach of doing this, right? A shorthand property, a shorthand operator, plus equal to 2. Which is exactly similar, right? We have learned it all in the operator session. So here we go. Still same. So that's how you can work with a loop. You simply need an initialization, then some kind of condition, and then a way to reach to that condition so that it becomes false. Now it depends on me whether I want this loop to execute 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times, or infinite times. It depends on how I initialize, what is my end, and how I reach there. How much I increment or decrement, it's completely up to me. So that's how a while loop works, guys. So now you can put any task inside it, whatever you want. Say for example, I start with 1 and I want to go till 10, not less than 10, till 10. And now I know that it's going to go from 1 to 10, so I can do this. Right? I can just print num. So in this case, if I print, okay, and let me also increment by 1, so num plus plus. So now I'm printing num. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now what I do here is I simply go ahead and while printing 1 to 10, I just say while printing, I want to multiply you by 2. And you can see now, we get a table of 2, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Just like that. So again, guys, understand I can do whatever task I want inside. It's completely up to me. And I can make use of this variable as like whatever I want it to do, I can make it do. In future, we're going to be traveling arrays with loop. We're going to be doing a lot of tasks with loops. So this is one basic example of how you write a while loop. So I hope you've understood it, guys. Now let's move ahead to the next one, that is do while loop. But before moving on to that, let's try to understand one more thing in while loop, that here you see that first you have initialization that is required, because if there is no variable or something like that, how are you going to write the condition, right? Now, very important stuff is you can see that in while loop, first you check the condition and then you have the block to execute. That means if the condition initially is false, let's say initially only, if I make it 11, we have already seen that if for the first time only the condition is wrong, this block will be skipped and I'll move ahead. You can check that out, right? You directly get this. So in while loop, the condition is checked first and then the block is executed. The complete opposite is do while loop. So let's see how that works. So again, for do while loop, I will need the initialization because I need a variable again, right, for conditions. So let's try to do while loop. So in do while loop, guys, the first keyword that you need is do and then the block. So you can do whatever you want now. So in this case, let me just do the same thing. Console.log num, or just print num in this case. You can also do whatever you want, calculations and stuff. And then again num plus plus, incrementing by 1. And in here, you write the condition at the end. So num less than equals 10, like this. So now what's the difference here is, let's say, first of all, let's make it normal. Cool. Num is 1. Good. Now you can see here that we are not checking any condition. We are directly saying do. That means please execute this block. So it will do console.log num. So num was 1. So that will be printed. Then num plus plus. Num becomes 2. And then check while 2 is less than 10. Yes. Then go back up. Then again print. Now it will print 2. Then num plus plus. Num becomes 3. Again come here. Is 3 less than 10? Yes. Go back up. So for the time the condition is getting correct, it will always go to the top just like while loop. So let's see right now. Perfect. 1 to 10. But let's say now I go and make the condition false initially. Now here comes the difference. Now num is 11 and now it goes do and execute this block. That's the change, that now it's not checking for condition. It's simply saying do. That means no matter what is the variable's value, just do it. So console.log, it will print 11, then num plus plus, that means it will become 12, and then it will check the condition. Check if 12 is less than 10. No. Equal to 10. No. Wrong condition. Move ahead. Don't go back up. Just move ahead because the condition is false. But you saw that we can see that initially only the condition was wrong. But the do while loop at least executed once. So that's the difference between a while loop and do while loop. That in while loop, the condition is checked first. That's why even if it is wrong at the first time, it will skip. But in do while loop, the execution happens first and then the condition is checked. That's why even if the condition is wrong at the first time only, it will still happen at least once. If it is normal, then it will go normal. But even if it is wrong, it will at least execute once. That's why while loop is also called as entry control loop, because the condition is checked at entry, and do while loop is also called as exit control loop because the condition is checked at the exit. So I hope you have understood it, guys. Now let's move ahead to the last one, which is one of my favorites, which is something that you're going to use a lot. That is the for loop. Now guys, understand that for and while are a lot similar because both of them are entry control loops. Now I hope you have understood like what is entry control loop, right? The condition is checked first, then the execution happens. So for loop is like that. But as I said, for is one of the most used loops. So if it is like while, why it is most used and while is not most used? Because for is very, very beautiful syntactically. Writing for loop is very, very easier and more understandable. Let me show you how. So now you can see in while loop what you do. Like you will do initialization somewhere else, right? Like this. So you have initialization, then you need a condition. So you know that initialization, condition, and increment decrement are three main parts of the loop because without initialization, you cannot write condition. Without condition, your loop will not run. And also without increment decrement, you cannot reach to that condition. Correct? That means initialization, condition, and this is a very, very important part of a loop. These three things are very, very important parts of the loop. But in some case, if your while loop is having thousands of lines of code, then your decrement statement or increment statement might be at the bottom. So you have to go up and down if there are 1,000 lines of code inside your loop, right? But what for loop says is, okay, fine. I know that these three things are very, very important, right? So what I'll do is, while writing me, you mention all your important stuff at one place. So initialization, condition, semicolon, your increment or decrement statement, and that's it. I will work exactly like a while loop, but the best part is all your important stuff is at one place. So now even if the code inside the loop is 1000 lines or 2000 lines, doesn't matter, because if you want to see all your important stuff about the loop, or if you want to do any changes, you have to just come to the single line. You don't have to go up and down, check where is initialization, check where is your condition, check where is your increment decrement statement, because all the important stuff is at one place. So syntactically it looks a lot better. But now let's see how it works. So console.log num, and you'll see it is exactly same. Let the output. Here we go. You can see nothing changes. Now how it is working, guys? Exactly same. Initially num becomes 1. Good. Then check, is 1 less than 10? Yes. Come inside, execute this block. Then increment it. Okay, 1 becomes 2. Then again check the condition. Is 2 less than 10? Yes. Execute this block. Then again go to this num plus plus. So until it becomes 11, this loop will never stop. Once this becomes 11, it will check 11 less than 10, no. Equal to 10, no. Condition false, simply skip the block and move ahead, whatever it is. So that's how a for loop works, guys. So you can see while and for are quite similar. Do while is a little different. So it depends on your use case, which one are you going to use in future, right? So that's it, guys. That's how a loop works. Understand that it's something that repeats itself again and again by default. That means you don't tell the loop to repeat. Loop repeats themselves by default. You just tell it when to start and when to stop based on a condition, and you make use of it. Whenever you want to do something continuously, you can put it inside a loop block, either in for or in do while or in while. So that's it, guys. That's all about loops. Now there are few more kinds of loop available in JavaScript that we'll be seeing in future when we start working with arrays and objects. So that's it, guys. I hope you have understood loops. Okay. Thank you so much. See you in the next part. Okay then, guys, in this particular part, we'll try to understand what is a function in JavaScript. So simply speaking, a function is nothing but a block of code which is used to perform a specific task. So let's say, for example, in this particular code, I have around 10-15 lines of code, and inside this you can see there are these 3 lines of code which are doing a simple addition. I have a variable a, that is 5, a variable b, which is 6, and I'm simply calculating the addition and storing it in C. Now let's say I need to write this particular 3 lines of code, or I need these 3 lines of code a lot of times in my program because I want to do addition a lot of times. So let's say I have 1000 lines of code, and in that I need it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. So what I'll be doing is I'll be writing the same code again and again. You can see I'm writing it again here, or else whenever I need it again, I have to write it again. So I'm writing literally the same code again and again, which is basically making my program bigger, and this code is also redundant. And if it goes bigger, or maybe right now it's addition, in future it may be a 30 line of code, 40 line of code, which is I'm repeating. So it will make my program look a lot messier. So what can I do for it? So what I can do is I can create something called as a function. So what I can do is I can create a block which has a name. So something like this, I can create a block called as add, and then I can put this particular code inside that block. So now what I can do is wherever I need these 3 lines of code, instead of writing these 3 lines, I can just call this block there. So I can just go here and put add. Now if I need it here, I can just put this add. So wherever I put this add, you can think that this 3 lines of code is getting executed there only. So now wherever I need these 3 lines of code, instead of writing it, I'm simply going to call add like this. Now if I need to call it 10 times, I just have to call this add 10 times. I don't have to write this code. So that will make my program a more readable, manageable, and also I'm writing the code only once, but I'm using it a lot of times. So that's the benefit of function. And this is not the only benefit. This is only the starter or beginner benefit. There are a lot of things that you can do with functions, because in JavaScript, go anywhere, go in React, Angular, everywhere you'll find functions and their uses. Like everything is dependent or made using functions. So this is one basic example of what exactly a function is. But this is not how actually you create it. This was just an idea that it's nothing but a block of some code which is performing some specific task. Now let's actually see how to create a function. So let me just remove all of this and let's create a function. So in JavaScript, to create a function or a block of code, you have to use the function keyword and then give it some name, whatever you'd like. So in this case, I'm calling it do something. And one more thing to remember, guys, never give a space between the function names. So it should be a single word, but it can contain many, what you say, words, but you can't give spaces. Okay, and then at the end of the name you have to put this parenthesis, or also what you call as rounded brackets, and after that this is what you call as the function block where the code lives. So I can write any code I want here. So in this case I'm simply going to write console.log. Let's just say I am a function. Now you can think that, okay, fine, this is my function, this is the block of code, and the block of code name is do something. That means wherever I want this code, I just need to call this. Now right now my function is only having one line of code, but in future it can have n number of lines. Now one important thing to understand here is that functions don't get executed by default or by themselves. So if I have to show you this, you can see there's nothing in the output. So you have to call a function if you want to use it. So in this case I have to go ahead and I have to call the function which is name. So do something and simply the brackets or parentheses, and that's it. Now you're calling the function. You can see the output. So wherever I call it, you can think of that this code is getting executed there. And the best part is I can call it n number of times. See? Now I'm not writing this line of code again and again. And as I said, guys, don't think that this is only a single line. In future, this block can contain 30, 40, 50 lines of code. And you will write it only once, but you can call it n number of times wherever you want in between the code. So for example, let's say here something is going on. For example, console.log normal code. But wherever I need it, I can also call do something again. It's up to me now. I can call it wherever I want. As a matter of fact, this log that you see here is also a function. And we use it a lot of times for printing anything. I'm using it again and again. But somewhere, someone has written it only once. So this log is also a function. Okay? So that's how you simply create a function. And that's how you call it. Right? Now, few more things. What if you ever want to send some data inside the function from wherever you're calling it? So let's say I have some data here. Let's say let num, or let's say anything like f name, first name equals, let's say Saurabh. Okay, I want to send this data inside the function so that the function can use it and do something based on it. So you can send it via something called as parameters. So what you can do is, you inside this parenthesis you can create variables. So I can call it, let's say, name, right? And this variable can be only used inside the function. Remember that, guys. This variable can be only used inside that function, but the value of this variable will come from outside the function. Okay, so if I just go here and let's say I'm using it, so let's just say I'm doing the name is, and I'm printing this name. Now since this function is having a parameter, wherever you're calling it, you have to pass a value for it. So let's say I can pass any value. So I can just go ahead and say, let's say Thor, right? So now I'm calling do something and I'm sending Thor, and this Thor will go inside this variable. Now understand, guys, the variables that you create in parentheses are called as parameters, and the value that you pass is called as argument. So this is argument which will go into this parameter. These are just names, guys. You can also call them variable and value, but it's just that a variable that you create in parentheses or in the rounded brackets are called as parameters, and the value that you pass for it is called as an argument. So you're sending this Thor in this name, and then this log will happen and it will print the name is Thor. So let's see. And here we go, you can see the name is Thor. But why did I create this then? I just wanted to show you that either you can pass your direct value, or you might have a variable with some value and you can also pass that variable. It doesn't matter. Here we go. Now the name is Saurabh. So that's how you can pass values to the function from outside. Now if I want, I can have n number of parameters like age as well. So I can also pass 25, and let's say I am going to also print the age. So in this case, one more console.log, and let me just put the age is, let's say, age, something like that. Now remember, guys, in whatever sequence you create your parameters, in the same sequence you have to pass the arguments. If I pass 25 first, so 25, like if I do this, let's say 25 and f name, so in this case 25 will go to name and f name will go to age. So always make sure that in whatever sequence you have created parameters, in the same sequence you pass the values or the arguments. So now in this case, here we go, the name is Saurabh, the age is 25. So that's how you can pass what you say arguments. Now I have shown you the variable. Let me again make it normal like this. Now You can also have something called as default parameters. For example, let's say I have a parameter called as city, and I give it a value directly here. So let's say city, I say Mumbai, something like that. And let me also print that here. So let me just go and do a console.log, and let me just put the city is city, something like that. Now you'll see I have created a parameter called as city, and I have given it a value called Mumbai. So now even if I don't pass any argument for it, it's printing Mumbai. So this parameter is allowed. But what if I pass a value for it? For example, let's say I pass New York. So in this case, what will happen is, if I pass a value for a parameter that is already having a value, in that case, it will ignore its default value and it will take whatever I am passing. So in this case, it should print New York. But if I don't pass a value for a default parameter, so now it will take this value. And here we go. Now it's printing Mumbai. So that's how you create default parameters. You create the variable, directly give it a value. It will only take that value if you don't pass anything for it as an argument. But if you don't pass it, then it will take this. If you pass it, then it will ignore this and it will take whatever you are passing. So that is what a default parameter is. So that's how you create a function, guys, and that's how you simply can create parameters and pass arguments for it. Now, one last thing about functions, that is, functions can also return data. Okay, so let's say I have a function, okay, and let's say I call it something like add, just for now. And let's say now I declare some variables inside this function. So let's say I go let and let a equals 23 and let b equals 34, something like that. And I do let c equals a plus b, right? So now I've created few variables inside the function. So a is 23, b is 34. Then I'm adding them and storing in c. And then at the end, what I can do is I can say return c. That means now when I use a return keyword, that means wherever I call this add function, at the exact same point, this value of c will be available. Let me show you that. So I'm calling this add function. Now, as I said, wherever I call this add function, at the exact same place, this function is going to give a value of c. That is going to be, I think, 7 and 5, 57, something like that, right? But I need to see it. So now if I want, I can console.log this function. So I'm calling add, right? I'm calling add. This add is creating two variables, adding them and returning the value. So as I said, wherever I'm calling it, it is returning the value at that place. So 57 is coming here and I'm just logging that 57. So I should get it. And here we go, you can see 57. If I want, I can also do this. Rather than calling it in console.log, I can just do let res equals, I can call add like this. So now I'm calling my add function. It will do all of its task, and then whatever it is returning, it will return and it will get stored in res. So I can also print res like this. So here we go, you can still see it's 57. So functions can also return data. But now guys, one important thing to understand is that functions can only return one value. So either a single array or a single object or a single boolean value. You cannot return multiple things like c, a, something like that, right? So that is not allowed. A function can only return a single value. If you want to send multiple values, use an array instead. And also, if in any case you write return, let's say in here directly. Now understand guys, return is always considered as the last line of the function. So if I put, let's say not return c, let's just say return 23, something like that. Now I'll see what will happen, right? If I try to do something out after this, right? If I just try to do a console.log, let's say after return, right? So I'm writing some code after the return statement. Let's see what's going to happen. So this function is returning 23, right? So if I'm calling this function, this will happen, and this should happen that I'm expecting, but let's see now. And you can see 23 gets printed. That means this function returned 23. I got my 23 in here and I printed it, but this is not happening because return is always considered as the last statement. So if I put this before return, it will work. But if I put anything after return, it is considered as an unreachable code, because after return, inside the function nothing gets executed. That's why you should always make sure that return is your last statement of a function. Never put it on the start or in between until and unless you need it like that. Okay, so that's how you can return something from a function, and now you also know few rules. Now in future sessions, I'll also show you some more ways of creating functions, the new ways like arrow function and all. But for now, I hope you have understood how to create functions. You can put any code inside it, guys. There is no particular way of like writing a code inside it. And also it can have parameters to which you can pass values from outside. Now you also know default parameters, and you also know how can a function return something and how to use it outside. So that's it, guys. I hope you have understood functions. Now see you in the next part. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, in this section, let's talk about arrow functions. So first of all, arrow function is nothing but it's just another way of writing functions. That's it. It's just that it provides some extra features that are a little cool to use, which shortens your code. That's it. Don't think that they are the best approach over normal functions. You can still use normal functions instead of arrow functions. It's just arrow functions provide a little more features and they are a little compact, short. So let's go ahead and let's see how to write an arrow function and what are the differences. So first of all, let me create a normal function. So a normal function would look something like this, right? So if I create a normal function called do something, it will look something like this. And I can simply do a normal console.log, let's say hello world. So in this case, let's call it and let's see the output. So do something. And here we go. You can see that. I get my output. Here we go. Hello world. Now let's create the same function using the arrow function logic. So basically in that case, first thing that arrow function says is you can avoid the function keyword. So now you no longer have to use the function keyword. Directly write your function name and then equal to your parameters, parenthesis, and then this. This is what you call basically as an arrow. So it's basically equal to and the greater than sign. That's it. And then you can go on with your brackets and simply console.log hello world. And now calling is exactly similar to, you have to still call it like this and save it. And you can see still the same output. So that's how you create a simple arrow function. Now I might think there is not much of a difference. The only thing that I am getting rid of is the function keyword. So let me tell you a few more things. Now, if your function is having more lines of code, then in that case, you can use this like curly brackets. Now normally, if you have only a single line of code, you can go ahead and avoid these curly braces and simply write your code like this and it will still work. But only if you have a single line of code. Don't forget that. Now let's say you are returning something from a function, right? So let's say return 2. So you can also return from this function. It's completely fine. I can simply say return 2. That's it. Or maybe let's return something else. Okay, fine. Let's in this case put 2. So return 2. Now wherever I call it, I know that this function will return 2. So I can just log out this function. So I'm calling this function, it will return 2. So 2 should get printed. So let's see that. And here we go. Now again, you can see it's a single line of code. So since it's a single line of code, I can avoid curly braces. But then it will cause a problem because it's a return statement. So what arrow function says is, if it is a single line of code, you can avoid curly braces. And also, if it is a return statement, if it is single line and also a return statement, you can also avoid the return. And that's it. Now, this whole thing and this is exactly similar. So that's where the compactness comes in. That's where arrow functions provide you a very simple way of writing few lines. And that's it. You can still see the same output. And also, if you want to pass parameters, in normal functions, you go ahead and pass something like this. In here, you can again do the same thing, right? So let's now make it a little bigger. So let's try to print that name. So console.log name. That means now I have to pass something from here. So let's remove this console.log. Now because I'm not returning anything, so nothing will be printed. And let's pass Saurabh. Now in this case, it should print the name. Yep, it is completely printing. Now if I again want, I can simply ignore this because again it is still a single line of code. But now arrow function says that if you have a single parameter, you can also ignore these parenthesis, and you can still see the output. Normally I don't ignore it because I like them in my functions. It makes it look like a function, but again, if you want, you can ignore it, but again, only if you have one parameter. If you have more parameters, you should go for parenthesis, and that's it. That's how arrow function look like. So basic rules, that you don't have to use function keyword anymore. You have to use this arrow in here, and if it is a single line of code, you can avoid curly braces. And if it is a return keyword, if it is a single line of code with a return keyword, you can also ignore the return. So that's it. That's all. That is all about arrow functions. Now let me teach you one more thing in this same section, something about callback functions. So what exactly is a callback function in JavaScript? Now we normally know that I can pass parameters, right? I can pass parameters in a function and I can use them inside. So I'm passing this name, that means I'm going to pass some string, and I'm using this string inside. So let me just use it. So do something, and then I'm passing, let's say, Saurabh. So I know that this Saurabh is an argument which will go to this parameter, and I'm using that inside. Now inside the function I can do whatever I want. I can do some calculation. In this case I'm just doing a normal printing. So let's see if it is working. And yes, it is working perfectly fine. But just as I can pass a string, I can pass anything. I can pass a number, I can pass a boolean, I can pass whatever I want, an object, an array. In the same way, if I want, I can also pass a function. So I can pass a function in here, function, and let's say this function is doing nothing. It's just saying console.log hello. That's it. So I can also pass a function as a parameter. And now in this case, this whole function is going inside this name variable. Now again, you can change the variable name, but in this case, I'm putting name so that you can understand it better. So this function is going inside this name variable. That means this name variable is holding this function. So now if I want, I can use that name variable as a function because it is holding a function. So now I am calling do something and giving it as a function as an argument. And that function is going in the parameter and it's getting called inside. That means if I call do something will be called, it will be executed, and internally it will be executing one more function which is coming from parameter. So in this case, first of all, let's see if it is working. Here we go, you get hello. And if I have some other code of do something, that is also fine. So let's say this is do something function code, something like that. So you can see both of them are working. So now in this case, when you pass a function as an argument to another function which is getting called inside, this function that you're passing is considered as a callback function, because this is your main function that is getting called, and internally after doing its own task it is calling your function. So that's why this function that you're passing as an argument is considered as a callback function. That means a callback function is nothing but just a function passed as an argument to some other function. That's it. Normally if you go on internet, you will find people writing this as a parameter, callback, because that's what it means, right? So they normally call it callback. But again, guys, don't get confused. It's just a normal text that you're giving. You can call it anything. Don't think that callback is a keyword. You can literally call it anything. But normally people call it callback to make it much more sensible. But you can see the output is still same. So that's what a callback function is. Now again, if you want, you can also create this function as arrow function. Why not? As arrow function says, you can ignore the function keyword, and since this function is not having any name, no need to worry about the name. So you don't have to pass like some name and equal to now, because it's an anonymous function. You're not giving any name to it until it goes in this variable. But you just have to use the arrow syntax. So that's it. Your 100 brackets or parenthesis and then arrow and this. So that's it. That's how it looked like. So you can also pass an arrow function as an argument or a normal function. It's completely fine. And this is, guys, a callback function. So that's it. So I hope you have understood how to create normal arrow functions, and I hope you have understood how to use callbacks, or what exactly is a callback function. Now in future we'll be using this a lot in a lot of different functionalities. So I just wanted to tell you what callback is. So that's it from this session, guys. Now I'll see you in the next part. Thank you so much. Okay, then let's try to understand let, var, and const. Now we all know that var is simply used to create variables in JavaScript, and the way we create is using the var keyword, and then I can create any variable with any name. So I can simply say first name, and then let's say I store a value Thorab, and I simply can console.log it, right? So that's how you create a normal variable using var, and my page is already up and running. So here we go. I can see the value in the console. That's good. Now I can also create my variable using let, and it works exactly same. So now the question is, what is the difference between let and var? So to understand the difference, let's try to create a function. So let's create a function called as, let's say, do something, and let's call this function. And let's do one thing. Let's put this code inside that function. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dummy block inside the function. So in future, this can be a if block, this can be a loop, or this can be whatever you want, right? This block can be a if block, this block can be a loop, or whatever you'd like. Right now, it's just an empty block. And now let me put this variable inside that block. And let me first show you the example with var. So now you can see I have created a variable inside this block, and I'm accessing it outside the block. Let's see if I can access it. And here we go. I can see my output. So if you create a variable using var, no matter in which block you create it, variables created using var will be always accessible throughout the whole function in which they are created, because var is function scoped. So no matter how many levels of block you have, if it's third level, fourth level, fifth level, doesn't matter. If a variable is created using var, it will be available inside the whole function. On the other hand, if I create my variable using let, in that case, you will see I get an error that first name is not defined. That means here when I'm trying to print it, it's unable to find the first name because it is created inside this block. And variables created using let are always block scoped. That means in whatever block you create them, they will be only accessible there. So right now this let can be only used inside that block. So if I want to show you, here we go. We'll see now it's working fine. And if I move it one up, like to the function block, now this will be available inside the whole function because it's inside the function block. So remember that, guys, var is function scoped. So no matter where you create it, it will be always available inside the whole function, and let is block scoped. So in whatever block you created, it will be only accessible there. And let was introduced in the ES6 convention of JavaScript in 2015. It is an improvement over var because in all the other languages, the variables are by default block scoped, but in JavaScript, var was always function scoped. So to improve it, they created let. Now then, let's also talk about const. So const is nothing but it's similar to let. It is also block scoped, but the difference is when you create variables using const. So for example, let's say const num equals 23. And now if I just go ahead and print it, right now it will just behave normally. The 23 will be printed. Here we go. You can see that 23 is getting printed. But now if I try to change it, let's say to 34, you will see that I cannot change it. It says assignment to a constant variable. That means the variables that you create using const are constant. That means you cannot change them. So you can use it to store some constant values in your program that you basically don't want to change, or it's never going to change, or you don't want to change it accidentally. So use them wisely, use them properly. They are really, really cool. Okay, so that's it, guys, from this session. I hope you have understood let, var, and const. I'll see you in the next part.
Okay then, what is an array in JavaScript? So array is nothing but a collection of elements of same type or collection of data of same type. It can be anything. It can be a collection of numbers, collection of strings, collection of booleans. So any collection of same type can be considered as an array. And it is always stored inside a single variable, and that's the best part about it. So it's nothing but collection of data of same type stored inside a single variable. Now we all know that normally inside a variable we store a single value. For example, something like this. Here I have a variable called as num, and inside that I have stored 23. But I can also store multiple values inside a single variable with the help of an array. So let's see how to do that. So to create an array, you simply have to first of all create a variable. So let's say you can call it by any name, and then simply put square brackets, and that's it. Now inside the square bracket, you can pass n number of values separated by comma, just like this. Now inside this, I have 5 values. So right now my nums variable is holding 5 values as an array. That's it. That's how you create an array
in JavaScript. Now this array can also contain string, this array can also contain boolean. But now guys, before we move ahead, let's try to understand few things about array. Now the number of elements that an array stores is considered as the length of the array. So right now this array is holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. That means the length of this array is basically 5. Now if I want to access any of the element, let's say I want to access the 67 or 89, we have to work with something called as indexing. In arrays, all the numbers are stored on a particular index. Index is nothing but, let's just say, numbering. For example, if I want to read it in normal English, this will be the first element, this will be the second element, this will be the third element. But in case of arrays, the indexing starts from 0. So this is the 0th element. This is the first element. This is the second element. That's how it goes. So this element is on 0th index. This element is on first index, then second, then third, and then fourth. Now understand guys, my length of the array is 5. That means there are 5 elements inside the array. But since the index starts from 0, the last index is 4. Now why I'm explaining this too much? Because a lot of people get confused. If the array length is 5, why the last index is 4? Because they forget that the starting point of an array is 0. So the length is nothing but the number of elements, but indexing starts from 0. That's it. So now let's say I want to access this 45. So according to the array, 0 and 1. So this element is on index number 1. So if I want to access it, I'll just go, put my array name, and then simply 1. And that should give me this value. So let's see that. Here we go. You can see 45. That's how simple it is. And just like that, I can also go and put console.log, let's say nums of 2. Just like that, I can access all the elements. You can see 67. I can also access the first element just by putting 2 here. See, sorry, the 0, the first element. Here we go. That's how you can access all the elements one by one. And if you ever want to change any elements, for example, let's say in this case on index number 2, I have 67 and I want to change it. So let's say before printing, let's try to change it. So to change it, just like a normal variable, access that area. So nums of 2. And initially it is 67, but I want to change it to, let's say, 78. And that's it. So let's see if this particular line prints 78, that means the change was successful. So let's see that. And here we go. You can see now it's 78. So initially it was 67, but I changed it to 78. Now, there is one thing inside this that, okay, fine. Now let's say I want to print all the elements. Do I have to write this console.log 5 times? Because that is tedious, right? If I have 10 elements, then I have to write 10 times. If I have 20 elements, I have to write 20 times. And not only printing, let's say I have some other work and I want to do it on all the elements. Am I going to write all that task again and again for every element? No. What you can do is you can also access an array or access all the elements of an array using a loop. And when I say loop, it can be any kind of loop. But in this case, I'm simply going to use a for loop. Now, since my first element is on 0th index, that's why I will start my loop variable from 0. And then I need to go till, right, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I just go ahead, 4 and I plus plus, because I want to go from 0 till 4. And then I can simply go console.log nums of I. So initially I is 0. So in that case, it will be nums of 0, then nums of 1, then nums of 2. And just like that, it will be accessing all the elements. That's how simple it is to access elements via a loop. But now in this case, there is still one problem. That is, what if in future the size of the element changes? Right now, it is hard-coded data. I have defined it directly. But what if this data is coming from internet or from some service or something like that? And sometimes this data might be 5, sometimes it might be 10. So am I going to go inside my code and change this number again and again? No, that's not possible. You cannot go always inside the code and change it. And it's also tedious. So what can I do to make it better? So understand, guys, initially I told you that the length of the array is 5. So your array, now if there is only 5 numbers, then only the length will be 5. That's fixed actually. Now, if you ever want to get the length of the array, all the arrays that you create in JavaScript provide you with a property called as length. So array name dot length. And let me just print it for you so that you can see what's the length right now. We know it's 5, but let's just still check it. So let's just put length. And let's see. And here we go. You can see length is 5. But what we wanted to actually know here is not the length, it's that this property gives us length, and now what we can do is instead of this 4, I can use this length here. But I know that nums.length will go till 5, but I want to go only till 4. So instead of less than equal to, I'll just write less than, and that should be it. And here we go, it's still same. But the best part is now even if my element grows in future, even if my array grows in future, it becomes big, it becomes small, it has less elements, more elements, it doesn't matter, because I don't have to change anything inside the code. It works perfectly fine. So that's how you can simply create an array. And guys, remember that in my array I can store anything. It's not only that you have to store numbers, it can be anything. So let's say I'm storing some strings inside it. So Thor, maybe Iron Man, then let's say Hulk, whatever you want, you can store it. And now this loop will still print it. And here we go. See, all of that is fine, and the length also changes to 3. So that's how, guys, you can work with arrays in JavaScript. Okay, now in the future session we'll talk about objects. So that's it from this video, guys. That's it from this part. See you in the next part. Thank you so much. Okay then, what is an object in JavaScript? So simply speaking, object in JavaScript is nothing but collection of properties and functions which help you to maintain your data better. So let's, for example, say you want to create a data for someone, like let's say a student or someone like that. So normally what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create some variables. For example, if I want to store the name of the student, I have to go and just put like, okay, let's say name Saurabh. If I want to store age of that student as well, so I have to go like let age equals, let's say 24, and let's say that student also has a city. So to store the details of one student, I used 3 different variables in this case, right? Name, age, and city. Now the next thing is, what if I want to store data of one more student? I have to create 3 more variables, and I cannot give those variables same name. I have to go for name 1, name 2, age 1, age 2, city 1, city 2. And if I need 3 students, 4 students, then I might need a lot of variables, which will be very, very tough to maintain and use. Because if I have like around 10 students, I will have 30 variables with 30 different names, and it will be very, very tough to maintain. So that's where objects come in. Objects give you a way to store related data at one place. So let's see how to create an object, and then you will understand it better. So what I can do is I can simply go ahead and simply create an object. So let's call it anything for now. Let's just call it student, something like that. Then equal to curly braces. In this case, this is what you call as object literals. And now inside this, you can create properties. Properties are nothing but something just like variables, but they are a part of an object. They belong to something. That's why they are called as properties. So I can create a property, then colon. Remember guys, inside objects, you cannot use equals. You have to use colon, and then you can pass any value. So Saurabh, age, let's say same 24, and let's say city, Mumbai. Now, if you look at it, it will not make much of a difference, because you will feel, okay, fine, I was also creating 3 variables here, I'm also creating 3 properties here. But the difference is now all of these 3 are at one place inside an object called as student. Now, if I want to share this data, I don't have to share 3 things. I can simply share the student object, and all these 3 things will go with that. I can access this data at any point of time. And the best part is, now if I have one more object, I can simply call it, let's say, something called as student1, but I don't have to change my naming convention, because it can also have name, let's say something like Thorab, age 34, and city, let's say anything like, let's say in this case, New York, something like that. So see, my naming convention doesn't get hampered, because this object, now yes, obviously you have to give different names to the objects, but inside the object, you can maintain your naming convention. So these 3 properties are of the student, and these 3 properties are of the student, and the naming convention is still same, and it looks good. So that's where objects help you a lot. Now in future you'll understand more about it, but right now let's work with it. So in this case, let me just remove this object, and let's work with one object right now. So here we go. Student is an object with 3 properties. Now what if I want to use any of the property? But before that, let's just print the whole object. So console.log student, and let's see what are we getting here. So just print the whole thing, and here we go. You can see now. So age 24, city Mumbai, name Saurabh. That's simple how it is. Now then, What I want to do is I want to access any one property from that. So it's very simple. Object name, then dot, and see, you get all the options, age, city, and name. So what do you want to access? I want to access name. So student dot name. That's how you can access properties. Simple. Object name dot the property name, and I can access anything. Student dot name, student dot age, and all that stuff. Now, one more thing. What if I forgot to add one property and I want to add a new property? Now, it's really simple that I can simply go inside and add a property. But what if you want to add a property inside an object from outside the object? Is it possible? Yes, it's completely possible. You can simply write the object name dot any new property that you want to add. So let's say I want to add a property called as major, like major subject or something like that. So equal to, let's say in this case I put science, and that's it. So now this major property will be added inside this object and the value will be science. So in this case, guys, please don't forget you have to use equals. Only inside the object you have to go for colon. If you're putting in something from outside, you have to go for equals. So now if I print the whole student, you will see that major property is also added, just like all the other properties. See that? So that's how simple it is to add a property. Now there is one more way of adding a property, that is by using the arrow notation. One way is using the dot notation, the other way is using the arrow notation. So you can also do something like this, student, and then use arrow notation, and then any property. So let's say in this case I pass, like let's say hobby, something like that, equals, in this case let's just put football. Now you'll see that this will also be added as a property. Hobby will also be added as a property inside this object. So let me save it, and here we go. See that, guys? Hobby is also added as a property. Now the real question is, why do we have two ways of adding a property? Like if one way is working fine, so why do I need another way? So now let me give you an example. Right now, like let's say your property is coming from some server or some user, or let's say your property is dynamic. So let's say it's inside a variable, right? So let's just go and let's call it new prop, something like that, and equals to let's call it, we have name, age, city, major, hobby. What else I can have? I can have, let's say, DOB or DOY, date of, like year of what do you say? Yes, year of birth, YOB, something like that. I'm very bad at it. So yeah, year of birth. Okay, so I want to add this YOB as my property inside this object, and let's say it is stored inside a variable. So now if I do this, student dot new prop equals, let's say in this case I pass 1995, something like that. Let me just move it a little up. Yep, here we go. So I'm adding student, and inside that I'm adding new prop, which is nothing but a variable which is holding YOB. So I'm expecting that YOB will be added inside this object. Let's see that. Save it, and here we go. See, in this case, new prop is getting added. This YOB is not getting added. That means when you use dot notation, it considers this as a property. So what if you want to add a dynamic property which is coming in a variable or which is coming from somewhere else? In that case, then guys, you have to use the arrow notation. And in this case, if I use the arrow notation, you will see now the property is YOB. So that's where arrow notation comes in handy. So whenever your properties are dynamic, of they are coming from somewhere else, you can always go for annotation. And same goes while accessing, not while adding. Also while accessing, if your properties are coming from somewhere else, for example, let me show you. So let's say I have a variable called as P, just giving any name right now, and inside that I have stored name. So if I do student.p, you'll see it will try to see if there is a property called p, and in this case you should get undefined because there's no property called p. But actually your p is holding name and you want to access name, so you cannot use dot notation, you have to go for arrow notation. And see that now? So if your properties are dynamic or stored in some kind of variable, go for arrow notation. If you're only fixed that, okay, fine, my property is going to be this only, then you can only go for dot notation if your properties are fixed. But if they are dynamic, if they're coming in some kind of variable or from somewhere else, you have to always go for arrow notation. So that's what it is, guys. That's what an object is. But this is only one part, because I said an object is a collection of properties and functions. We have only seen properties right now. We can also create functions inside the object. So to create it, just like any other property, give it any name. So let's call it print. And then let's say function. So that's what you have to do. Print This will be also considered as a property, but this is also considered as the name of your function, and then curly braces. And now you can write whatever you want. So let's say in this case, I want to just print something. So let's say console.log, I am inside function, something like that. So now my object has 1, 2, 3 properties and one function called as print. This can be anything, guys. You can call it anything. You can just call it do something or fun, whatever you want to give name. Now let's say I want to call this function. So let me just comment out all of this for now, and let's try to call that function. So to call it, again, same, just access it like any other property. So student dot, you can see print is coming, but since it's a function, make sure you end up with this rounded brackets or parentheses, and here we go, I'm inside function. Now if I want to access any of these properties inside the function, I can also do that. But to access it, don't forget you have to use something called as a this operator or a this pointer. So inside an object, this keyword means the current object. If I have to show you, let me show you. I'm calling student.print, and print will print this. Let's see what is this. And here we go. See, it's printing the exact same object. And it's also showing you that, okay, fine, I have a name, I have a city, I have an age, and I also have a print, which is a function. See that, guys? So that's how it is. So this inside object, this means the current object. So I can also use this keyword to access any of the property, just like that, because this is also this object. So I can simply say this dot name, and you should see that now it's going to be printing the name. So you can create n number of functions doing different things. So guys, that's it. That's what is an object. It's nothing but a collection of properties and functions. And the best part, it gives you a way of storing related data together, sharing related data to someone, right, by a single name, and the best part, holding the naming convention. So that's where objects come into play, and it is one of the most important concepts in JavaScript, because in future a lot of your data will come in terms of an object. Now before ending this particular topic, let's talk about one more thing. So let me create one more object here. Okay, so let's say let Avenger, something like that, one object, and let's say also 2 or 3 properties. So let's say name, Thor, age 1500, because he's not a human, right? And let's say planet, something like that, planet Asgard. Okay, good. So now I have an Avenger object, and we know that I can access all the properties just by using the object name, right? So I can simply say Avenger dot name, and I can access it. You know that, right? Here we go, Thor. Now what if someday I plan that I want to store these 3 properties inside some open variables outside. Let's say I want to use these properties outside, but I want to store them in some variable. So there are 2 ways. One way is I can do this. I can create a variable called as name, and I can store Avenger.name inside it, right? It's fine. It's completely fine. I can do it. It's not a bad idea, right? So I have a variable called as name, or you can call it anything. So I have a variable called as name, and I'm storing Avenger.name. I'm storing this properties value inside this name. Let's see if it is working. Perfectly fine, it works. Let's also try to store age. So let age Avenger.age, and let's try to print it as well. So name comma age. Let's see if it is getting printed. Yes, perfectly fine. But now there are a lot of times where you'll need to actually copy a lot of properties of your object into some normal variables to use it, so that you don't have to write this whole thing again and again. So in that case, if you ever want to copy properties of the objects inside normal variables, rather than writing this much, you can use a concept available in JavaScript called as destructuring of objects. You can destructure the objects. So let me show you how to destructure object. So you can simply go let create an object literal, and now inside this, actually don't create an object, just pass some variables. Now remember guys, your variable names should be exactly same as properties. So I can simply say name comma age equals, just pass student. That's it. Sorry, not student, in this case it's Avenger, right? So let's just pass Avenger. So now what will happen is JavaScript will go inside Avenger, okay, and it will try to find out property with name and age. So if it finds name and age, whatever value name holds, it will come under this variable, and whatever value age holds, it will come under this variable. And now you will see the output is still same because I got this. And just to show you that it's real, let me just change the age. Let's say 1505, something like that. See? So now, whatever I did here, this is the exact same thing, but by using the destructuring logic, which looks much more simpler and cleaner. And it's up to me. Even if my object has 10 properties, I can only mention 2 or 3 or whatever I want to extract. If I want to extract planet as well, I can simply go for planet. So I can now use my planet variable here. Simple. Now please understand, guys, these three are normal variables which are created outside the object. So this is what you call as destructuring, copying the properties of an object inside normal variables. And that's how you can do it, so that you don't have to do this tedious task. You can just do this. So that's it, guys. Now you know how to create objects in JavaScript and how to create functions and properties inside it, how to access them in multiple ways, and also what exactly is destructuring. So that's it from this part, guys. I hope you understood everything. See you in the next part. Thank you so much.
Okay guys, in this part we'll talk about array of objects. It is one of the most important concepts to learn in JavaScript because it will help you to understand data better. So in future, if you're calling APIs or maybe you're getting data from network, so whatever data comes, this topic will make you understand that data better. So let's say, for example, we create an object. So for example, like let Avenger. So it's a single object, and let's say it has some properties like name, Thor, something like age, 1500, and let's say something like a planet. So I have an object with 3 properties, right? Now let's say I want to create one more object, one more Avenger. So first of all, the first thing that I have to do is I have to give it another name, because I cannot call it Avenger because that name, that variable name is already taken. So I have to give it a different name, and then I can simply put the same 3 properties again, right? And it's completely fine. So I can create n number of objects like that. For example, let's say this object is Iron Man object. And just like that, I can create n number of Avengers. But the problem is, it is like creating a number of variables. So one variable name is Avenger, then the other name is Avenger 1, then the other name might be Avenger 2 or something like that. So if I want to create 10, 20, 30 Avengers, that will become problematic because all of them will have different name. And if I want to access all of them, I have to recollect different names, or I have to write them again and again. So what's the solution? So the solution is, since they are same kind of data, they are all Avengers, what I can use is I can use an array. So what I can do is, let's say I create an array called as Avengers, something like that. And it's an array. And just like that, we know, right? Array is nothing but it is something that can store multiple elements with same type. So what I can do is I can store this object inside that array, just like that. So now Avengers is an array, and inside that array we have this object. Now this is one element, one object or one element. So this whole object is on the 0th index of that array. And now just like that, I can create one more object, and this is on the first index. So I can say, let's say Iron Man, just putting some dummy data here, 34, and let's say Earth. And just like that, I can create one more, and I can go on and on and on. Since it's an array, it's completely fine. So let's say Hulk, 45, and Earth. Just like that, I can go on and on. And now I simply have an array of objects. So this object is on the 0th index, this on the first index, this on the second index. Now if I want to access them, I don't have to recollect different names. I know that the array name is Avengers. Now this is the whole array. If I print it, you will see what's going to come there. So let's go. And here we go. You can see I get an array on the 0th index. This whole object is there. On the first index, this whole object, and on the second index, this whole object is there. Just like that. And if I want to access any one of the objects, you know, right, how to access arrays? Array name, square brackets, and whatever index you want. So if I put Avengers of 0, I should get the first object. If I go Avengers of 1, here we go, the second object, just like that. That's how simple it is. And if I want to access any property of that object, so I know that Avengers of 1 is giving me this object, right? If I want to access property, just go ahead and put dot, whatever you'd like. So name, and here we go. I can access anything, age, whatever you want. And the best part is, now since this is an array, I can also access all the elements via a loop, so that I don't have to write these things again and again. For example, let's say I want to get names of all the Avengers. So in that case, I have to write something like this: Avengers of 0, that is first Avengers name. Then just like that, if I want the other Avenger name, I have to go Avengers of 1 dot name. But what if I have a lot of Avengers? In that case, I can simply use a loop so that I don't have to write this again and again. Because you can see the whole line of code is same. The only thing that is different is the index number. So we can just go for a loop. So in this case, for let I equals 0, because our index starts from 0, and then I is less than the array dot length and I plus plus. And simply we can go ahead and just do console.log Avengers of I. That means initially I is 0, so it will be Avengers of 0, then I will become 1, it will be Avengers of 1, and just like that it will move through all the objects one by one. First 0, then 1, then 2, and then so on and so forth. And then if I want to access anything, I can just go ahead like this. And you'll see now with this loop, I can access the names of all the Avengers easily. Just like that. So now no matter how many objects I have, I don't have to recollect different names, and I can also apply loops that makes my life a lot easier. So in future, whatever data comes from network or API, it will also look something like this. Okay, so this will help you to understand that in a much more better way. Now guys, this is not the only way to access array of objects. There are much more good and better methods provided by JavaScript, but we'll do that in the future. Okay, so that's it from this session, guys. See you in the next part.
Okay guys, in this part, we'll try to understand how does JavaScript do memory allocation. So there are 2 points that you should understand in this, that all your primitive types like number, boolean, string are stored in a memory type called as stack, and all the objects and arrays that you create, because JavaScript considers them as object, they are stored in something called as heap. Okay, so let me tell you how does this work. So let's say for example I create a variable num and I pass 23. Now since this is a primitive type and the size of this data is known, it will be stored in stack. So now I have created a very dummy diagram of stack and heap, but you can also find really good diagrams online, but this is what I can draw. So let me show you how does this work. So now since this is a primitive type, it will be stored in stack. So here it will go and put num 23. So num will be stored in the stack. And just like that, if I create one more variable, let's say for example num2, and I pass 34, so just like that, num2 will be also created on top of it because it's a stack. So whatever gets created first will always go down. So something like this will happen. So these two are primitive types and they are getting stored inside the stack. Now, why are we like trying to understand this? Let me show you. So now what happens is, let's say I do this. I say num2 equals num. That means I'm copying num's value inside num2. So what will happen is num is 23. So yes, num is 23. And then I say num2 equals num. So num's value, that is 23, will be copied in num2. So num2 will also have 23. And now in this case, both will be 23. So let me show you console.log. Let me just print like num is num, and let me also print num2 as well so that you can understand it perfectly. So num2, and let me mention num2 here. So now you can see num is 23 and num2 is also 23. And now since like I have num equals 23 and then I am doing num2 equals num. So if I change the value of num in future, let's say to 45, is num2 values also going to change? Let's see that. No, num becomes 45, but num2 is still 23. That means once you're copying, when you're copying, it's just the value of num is getting copied to num2. That's it. They are not getting any kind of connection. They are not creating any kind of connection, so that in future, even if num changes, num2 doesn't get hampered. So it's a very simple understanding that num initially was 23. I copied num's value to num2. So 23 got copied to num2. And even if I change num in future, it doesn't do anything to num2. That's why these primitive types are also called as value type, because they only hold values and share values. That's it. Now, in the same case, let's talk about the next important thing, that is objects and arrays, because both are considered as objects in JavaScript. So let me show you what's going to happen now. So let's comment out this logic. I hope you've understood this. Now, let's see. So let me create an object. So let's say let obj1, I'm giving some random names now, and let's say name is Saurabh, and let's say age is 26, something like that. Now, since this is an object, and as I said, objects are stored in heap, so this data right here will be actually stored in this really bad drawing of heap. So basically, we'll just go here and let's say this object is created here like this. Simple. So this object is created in heap, but this variable obj1, now try to understand, guys, this object is created inside the heap, but obj1 is actually not holding that object. Object gets created in heap, in the heap memory, and whatever address or whatever memory address this object is having, that memory address actually gets stored in obj1. So let's say this object might have an address of A111, something like that, something random. So this obj1 is actually created inside the stack. So if I just go here, so obj1 is created in the stack, and its value is not this object, its value is actually the address of this object. So whatever it might be, let's say A111, something like that. So this obj1 is actually holding the address of this object. Here it looks like that this object is getting stored inside obj1, but not. This object will be stored in a heap, and its address is held by obj1. So when we actually do console.log obj1, internally JavaScript actually finds out what data is on this address and prints that data for you. That's why you see the object. Now let me make you understand it completely. So now what if in future I go and I do this, let obj2 equals obj1. So now I'm copying obj1's value inside obj2. Now you understand that obj1 is actually not holding this data. This data is inside the heap. So when I'm copying, obj1 is only holding this address. So obj2 is also going to hold the exact same address. That's what's going to happen. So in this case, obj2 is also going to hold the same address. So now actually we have not created two copies of this object. There is still only one object inside the heap memory, but obj1, obj2 both have the same address. That means they are both pointing to the same object. That is what is happening. So let me make sure that you understand this. So now in future, if I go and change obj2.name, okay, let me print both of them first. So let me print obj1 and obj2, both of them. Okay, and now let's go. Let's say I try this top example when I changed num, but nothing happened to num2. Now in this case, I'm trying to change obj1.name, let's say equals Thor. Now according to this logic, obj2 should not get hampered, but because they are just holding the address, if I am doing obj1.name, it is actually changing this name. That means obj2 will also see that the name has changed because both of them are exactly pointing to the same object. So now in this case, let me show you. And here you go. See, both of them have Thor. So obj1 is also printing Thor, that I changed, but obj2 is also printing Thor because obj2 is not actually a copy. It is just a copy of its address. The actual object is only created once. And the same thing happens in terms of array as well. Let's say I create an array arr equals, or let's say I call it arr1, and I do 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And then I also do let arr2 equals arr1. Now again, guys, as I said, arrays are also considered as object, and guys, see, objects are also called as, now see, these variables obj1, because they are storing addresses, that's why they are called as reference variables or reference types. So actually the objects and arrays are considered as reference type, because when you store them in variables, they are actually not holding the data, they are just holding the references. When I say references, that means this address. That's why these things are also called as reference types. Okay, so this obj1 is a reference type, obj2 is a reference type. Now in the same case, I'm trying to do this. So now what will happen? I'm creating an array. Since this is a reference type or object, this will also be created inside the heap. So something like this will happen. And now ARR1 is created in stack because it's a normal variable, but it is also holding just the address of this array. So let's say that is B111, something like this. So when I copy ARR2 in ARR, like when I copy ARR1 in ARR2, it's just ARR2 is getting created and it's also holding just B111. That's it. So both of them are actually pointing to the same array. So now if I change using ARR1 something inside this array, ARR2 can also see the effects because both are using the exact same array. So if I just go ahead and do ARR1 of let's say 1, that means 3, I'm changing it to let's say 5. And now let's say we print both of them. So console.log ARR1 and ARR2, and now you'll see I've only changed ARR1, but ARR2 will also have the updated value. And here we go, see that 2545, 2545. So that is it, guys. That's why objects and arrays are considered as reference type, because the variables that you create only hold the references, not the actual data. And that's why these primitive types are called as value types, because they hold values, and when you copy them, they only copy the values and not addresses. So I hope you have understood how does this work. In future, you might, like a lot of times it happens, people don't understand how objects and arrays actually work, and then sometimes they try to copy. And then in future, when they change the object, all the copies also gets changed, so they get confused. So now I will also show you one really cool way of copying the objects properly, because when you copy like this, we know that we are actually not copying anything, right? So how to properly copy so that if something changes, the other thing doesn't change. Now see guys, in this case, it will definitely happen because you're not actually copying the data, you're just copying the address. So now let's talk about one really cool thing introduced in JavaScript, and then we'll see how to perform a proper copy if you want to. So the next topic that we're going to learn is something called as spread operator, which is a very new operator in JavaScript. So let me show you how it works. So spread operator is mainly used with arrays and objects. It is basic, as the name says, it is basically used to spread the array or the object. So let me show you. So let's say I have an array. So let's say let me just comment out all this stuff so that it doesn't cause any problem. And now let's say I have an array. So let nums, something like that, and 23, 45, 67, 89. Cool. Now let me just print it. So console.log nums. Now you'll see, here we go, nums, perfect, array. Now if I want, I can just go in front of that array and put dot dot dot. These 3 dots are considered as the spread operator. So let me show you what it does. It will basically spread this array. That means it will remove all the numbers from an array and spread it normally, like make it available openly. Here you go, see. Now all the numbers are just available openly. That is what spread operator does. It takes all the values and makes them available openly. Okay. So what I can do is I can actually do this if needed. Let's say nums2 equals, I create an array notation, right? Like it's basically a new array, and then I say dot 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 nums. That basically means spread all the value of nums. That means these 4 values will be available openly. So dot 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 nums will make sure that these 4 values are available openly, and then I'm just creating a new array out of them. And you will see now that if I print both of them, initially they will look same because I'm just spreading the values and copying it, right? So nums and nums2. So now both of them look same, but now if you can see, both of them look same. But now if I go ahead in future and change nums of let's say 1, that is 45, to let's say 90, it will not hamper nums2. So that's it. By using the spread operator, you can actually perform a proper copy. This is also what you call as deep copy. So now what's happening is we are actually not copying this variable into this variable, right? We are not copying nums to nums2. That is what we were doing earlier, right? Now we are not doing that. We are simply saying take all the values of num1 by spread operator and then simply create a new array. That's it. And that is the exact same thing we can do with objects. So in this case, guys, understand that spread operator simply makes all the values of array available in a spreaded manner. That's it. Now I can also do the exact same thing with the object. So let me show you that. So I can simply say let's say obj1. Okay, I think I already have it on the top, right? So let me just do it there. Okay, so now instead of performing obj2 equals to obj1, what I can do is I can simply go ahead and create a new object. So now it's a new object, right? New object. And if I do dot 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 obj1, that means when I do dot 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 obj1, all the properties of the obj1, not the whole object, guys, not the whole object, just all the properties of obj1 will be available openly. And then I'm just taking all that properties and simply curating or creating a new object, and then this obj2 is actually a new object. So this obj1 is one object and obj2 is a new object, which is just copying properties from the obj1, not copying the exact object. Okay, and now if you see, here we go, you can see this becomes Thor because I was changing obj1 dot name, but obj2 is not getting affected. It is still, okay, spelling mistake, Saurabh. Okay, so here we go, you can see that, right? So you can use spread operator to perform deep copy or proper copy of your array and objects, which helps you to create a proper new copy, so that in future, even if you change obj1, nothing will happen to obj2. But by default, if you copy normally, like normal variables, you're simply copying addresses, references, not the actual data. So I hope you have understood spread operator, guys. It is simply used to spread all the values of array openly or all the values of properties of objects openly, so that you can create new objects or new array out of it. So I hope you have understood all the concepts, guys. I hope you have understood how memory allocation works, how value types work, and how reference type works, as well as I hope you have understood how to use spread operator to actually perform deep copy. Because by default, when you copy it by default, it is known as shallow copy. That means you're not actually copying the object, you're simply copying the addresses, which makes it look like you're copying, but you're not actually copying. But when you do this, you're performing a deep copy. So that's it, guys. That's it. It's a very important topic because it will be used a lot of times when you start working with libraries like React and frameworks like Angular. Okay, so that's it. I hope you have understood and enjoyed this part. See you in the next part. Thank you so much. Okay then, guys, time to go a little advanced. So in this session, we are going to be talking about array functions. So what exactly are array functions? They are functions that are related to arrays or that help you work with arrays. So if you're working in a JavaScript, or if you're a JavaScript developer and you want to work with React, Angular, or Node.js, these functions are going to be helping again and again, and basically they're going to be saving your life almost always. Okay, that's why it's really important to learn all of them. So in this session, we are going to be discussing 3 of the most important array functions, that are for each, map, and filter. So what exactly are these functions? These functions help you to loop through or to access array elements in a better way, and if you want to perform some operations on the array elements as well, these are going to help you a lot. So don't worry about how they work. I'm going to explain you one by one on how to use it and how they're going to working. So let's start with for each. So now see, normally if I have an array, let's for example say let data. Now you can call it anything, guys, and let's say it's just an array of some numbers like this, right? Now normally if I want to loop this array, the normal way is that we have learned is simply by using a normal for loop. So I can just go ahead and do this, right? So I is less than whatever array it is, data dot length, and then I plus plus, right? That's how simply we loop it. And if I want to use the element, I can print it, or I can use it, or I can do whatever I want. In this case, I'm just printing it. So data of I, something like that, right? So in this case, if you see the output, you get all your values. That's amazing. That's what we have learned. But now there is one more way of looping through arrays, which is much more compact and a little better. It will help you a lot while you're working with a bigger array, and if you want to do a lot of changes in that. And that is nothing but for each. So let's see how for each works. So now comment this out. Now if you want to use that for each array function, first you write down your array name dot for each, and then inside this for each function there goes a callback function. Now again, guys, we have learned both the ways. So either you can put your callback function like this, or you can also put your callback function in arrow syntax. It doesn't matter, both ways are fine. Okay, so now this callback function, which is inside for each, gives you three parameters. First, the current element. So let's say I'm going to call it current e, that is current element. Second is the current index, and third is the whole array. So basically what happens is, this for each function says I am gonna go through all the elements one by one. So it starts from 0 and goes till the very end, and for every element that it gets, it's gonna call this function for it. So it's like for each will start, first it will go to 23 and it will call this function, and when this function is called for 23, in the current element variable 23 will be there, in the index whatever is the index of 23, so in this case 0 will be there, and in the array this whole array will be there if you want to use it. And then for each will iterate, then after completing this it will move ahead to the next element. So now it will go to 45, and for 45 also it will call this function, and now it's on 45. That's why in current element you will get 45, in index you should get 1, and in array you will still get the whole thing, and just like that it will go one by one onto all the elements. So let me show you. Let me print all of them. So if I just do console.log the current element, comma, the index, comma, the whole array. So as I said, this function is this callback function is going to be called for every element one by one. So at each point of time inside this, whatever the current element is, it will be there. In index, that element's index, and in the array, the whole array. So let's see, what are we getting here? And here we go. You can see first you get 23 and the index, that is 0, and also the whole array. Then 45 and its index, then the whole array. 67, then index, then the whole array. So that's how it goes. So basically a better way of performing looping, in which you also get the access to index and the whole array if you ever want to use it. Now it depends on your need how you're going to use it. Now you can do whatever you want, whatever you would like to do. You can do changes, or you can perform calculations, but that's how you get the element, guys. Okay, so that's how for each works. And again, if you don't want to use this third parameter, if you feel that okay, I'm never going to use it, you can completely ignore it. So no one is forcing you to write that parameter. Now you'll only get the element and the index. And again, same with this, you can completely ignore index as well, so you'll get the element. Now you can't ignore the element, because at least if you're using for each, you need that element, right? So you'll at least need it. So here we go. So that's how it works. So it depends on you. Now whatever you want, you can do it inside. So for each just provides a simpler and maybe another way of performing looping. So you can also do this approach, but this for each approach is a little better if you want to perform bigger calculations, if you maybe need the index, or you also want to use the array again and again, you can always go with for each. So that's how for each works, guys. It's just another way of looping through your array. Now then, I hope you have understood for each. Let's go ahead to the next function, which is my personal favorite, that is map. And in future, if you're ever going to learn React, this will be your lifesaver everywhere. That's why understanding map is very, very important. So let me show you how it works. So again, since it's your array function, you need to write your array, then dot map. And then inside that again, a callback function. And again, as I said, it can be a normal function if you want. So let's do this example with a normal function first, so that you can understand it in a better way. So here we go. And again, it gets three parameters. First, the element. So in this case, I'm just going to write ELE. This was a big name, right? And again, guys, these are just parameter names. You can call them whatever you want. It's not fixed that you have to call them current E or ELE. These are just variable names. That's it. So ELE, then I'm going to call it index, and again, the ARR. And inside this, let me print all of them. So console.log ELE, comma, index, comma, the array. So again, guys, the same thing. This function will be called for every element one by one. So again, when the map starts, it will go to the first element. Now this function, this callback function will be called for the first element. In the ELE, you will get that element. In index, you will get the index of that element. And in ARR, you'll get the whole array. And it will go through all the elements one by one. So let's see. And here we go. Then you might think now, then what is the difference between for each and map, right? So now, the one and the most important difference between for each and map is, for each function never returns, map function returns something. This map function returns something. So now if you want, you can actually, let's say I'm just going to return 1 for now. So return 1. Just say, for example, we are returning 1. So now we know that my array has 5 elements. That means this map function will call this callback function 5 times. And that means this return will happen 5 times. Correct? This callback function will be called 5 times because there are 5 elements, and every time it will return 1. So now this return will happen 5 times. So now whatever this map function is returning at the end, all that values will be collectively stored in an array, and that array will be returned by map. Let me show you that. Let call it A for now, and now let me show you by printing A. So console.log A. As I said, guys, whatever this callback function is returning, it's going to be returning 5 times, right? Because this function will be called 5 times, and all those 5 return values will be stored as an array inside this A. Let me show you that. And here we go. You can see that all the ones are there. Now it's up to me. I can return anything. I can just say return ELE plus 2, something like that. So we'll get this. So see, the first value was 23. So first it returned 23 plus 2. So I got 25. Then 45 plus 2, 47. 67 plus 2, 69. And then 91. And then 14. Just like that. I can do any kind of calculation, whatever I want, and I can return it. So that's where map comes in. You cannot return anything from for each because for each function doesn't return anything. So this is not possible in for each, but it's possible in map. So that's the basic difference between for each and map, that for each is only used for looping. Map can be used for looping, but the important part is it returns something. So if you ever want to do some calculations, do some changes on the elements, and then return a new array out of it, you can simply do that. So that's how it works, guys. That's the difference between for each and map. Okay. First, let's understand all of them. Then I'll also show you some examples on when can you use it. Right? Don't worry about that. So that is map, guys. And again, it's the same. If you want, you can ignore these things if you don't need them. Only if you need them, you should use them. Otherwise, you can completely ignore it. And again, as I said, right now I'm passing a normal function, but it can also be arrow function. So to make it arrow function, we will ignore the function keyword and just put the arrow symbol. That's it. It is still completely fine. You can see that, right? Cool then. Now then, let's move on to the next function. That is filter. Again, it is one of my favorites because it solves a lot of issue for me. So let's try to understand filter. Now, as the name says, filter is used for filtering out the arrays. So let's, for example, let me just go ahead and add few more elements. Let's say one more 45. Let me just add. So now there are two 45s in it, right? So let me go. Again, it's array function. So first your array name dot filter. And now inside this, again, the same thing happens. A callback function goes. And in here also, your element will be available. Element and the index will be available and the whole array will be available. But again, now I think you have understood that much. So I don't need the index or the array. Let's say I only need the element. So again, the same thing. This function will be called for every element one by one. So first for 23, then for 45. And that 23 will be available in this. That 45 will be available in this. But then, is it also doing the same thing like map or for each? No. First thing, guys, inside filter callback, you're never going to do any kind of operation or some kind of checking, or don't use filter for looping. From a filter, you should always return. And in return, you have to write a condition. So for example, I say return if element matches 45, something like that. So in this case, what will happen is the filter will start. First, it will go to 23. So inside ELE, I have 23. Then it says return if ELE is equal to 45. So is 23 equal to 45? No. So file, ignore it. Then next element. Now it will see return if, this means it's not return this condition, because if it is return condition, then it will return true or false. It's not return this condition. It means return the element that I am currently on. So right now I'm on 45, right? Right now I'm on 45. So return if current element, that is 45, is equal to 45. So yes, 45 is equal to 45. So return that element. So in this case, that 45 will be returned. And just like that for 67, for 89, and again it will encounter one more 45. So again that element will be returned. So in this whole array, these two elements will be returned from filter. And again, just like map, all the things, all the elements that a filter will return, they will collectively form an array, and at the end, they will be available in here. So let me show you. So console.log a, and you should get an array of 245s in there. Here we go. Just like that. Now again, guys, as we have learned in the previous lesson of array of objects, in this case, it's just an array of numbers. But as I said, it can be anything. It can be also array of objects. For example, I write name. So let's get an array of objects, guys, to understand it in a much more better way, where you're actually going to use filter. So let's say I have an array called as data, and inside that I'm having some objects. So let's say name, Thor, age 27. Then I'll have one more object. So let me just create, let's say 1, 2, 3, 3 more objects. And let me just change their name. So Thor, let's say Captain America it is, but I'm just writing it to save time. So Captain, let's say Hulk, and let's say Iron Man, right? So let me just put some dummy ages. So Captain's age is, let's say 34, Hulk's age again 27, and Iron Man's age, let's say 45. So now, inside this, now guys understand, again, remember the normal logic. Data.filter ELE. Now this is not an array of numbers, it's an array of objects. So in this case, when the data.filter starts, it will go to the first element, and the first element now is not a number, it's a complete object. So now inside this ELE, this whole object is coming up. To make you understand that in a much more better way, first of all, let me show you how for each works with this. So data.forEach, because we know, right, the basics of for each, filter, map are same. So let me just show you ELE. So now I'm not printing the index because you know what it will be. It will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I just get the array, it will be the whole array. So I'm just considering ELE in this case and just logging out. So console.log ELE. And now you'll see this ELE is giving you nothing but the objects. So this is the first element. This is the second element. This is the third element. This is the fourth element. Okay. So I hope you have understood that. For map also, it will be exactly same. And now in here, let's say, so now I'm doing data.filter ELE. Now inside this ELE, first this will come. Now I want to return the element if the age is 27. So I know that now ELE is holding this whole object. So if it is an object, I can also access any property. So I can write return if ELE.age is equal to 27. That's it. So now what will happen is filter will start. First it will go to Thor element. Okay, fine then. Check if ELE.age is 27. If it is equal to 27, return the whole element. Remember guys, it doesn't return this. This is only a condition. This means return the element if this condition matches. So return the element, return the whole element if ELE.age is 27. So this whole element will be returned. Then it will go to Captain. It will not match. So this element will not be returned. It will go to Hulk. Hulk matches because age is 27. So this whole element will be returned and this will not be returned. So this and this whole elements will be returned and they will collectively form an array and they are getting stored inside A. Now again, I can give it any name, but for now just A. And now let me show you A. And inside that now you should see only two elements, that is the Thor object on index 0 and the Hulk object on the index 1. So that's where you can use filter, guys. It will save you a lot of time. So let's say you have a big array, right, with a lot of properties and you want to filter out that array based on, let's say, some kind of price or age or address or something like that. You can always go for filter method. Now let me show you a use case of map as well. Now let's say someone comes to you and says, okay, fine, I have this array where I have name and age. Can you create an array out of it with only all the names? Can you create an array for me with all the names, just the names? Because this array is containing the whole object. I just want an array of names. Can you do that? So let's see how to use map in this case. So again, data.map. Again, I know ELE, index and everything, but in this case, I'm only going to be using ELE. Guys, again, this is not a good name, okay? The actual naming convention should be this. I know that these all are Avengers, right? So instead of calling this array data, let me call it Avengers. So it will now become Avengers. And now, instead of calling it ELE, I know that inside this ELE, one object will come. And that object is of an Avenger. So instead of calling it ELE, I can call it Avenger. That makes much more sense, right? But again, guys, understand it's not fixed. I can give it whatever name I want. I can give this whatever name I want. It's just I'm trying to maintain some naming convention. That's it. Now then, same stuff. Just return Avenger.name. That's it. That means now, first go to this element. Okay, fine. Inside this Avenger, first this element will be there. Return its name. Now understand, guys, map is not like filter. In map, whatever you return, it returns. So I'm saying return this thing only. In filter, it's return the whole element if the condition is true. But in map, it's simply return whatever I'm returning. So now, let's call it names. So I know now what will happen. This map will happen. This callback function will be called for every element one by one. And then it will return all the names. And I know that whatever map returns, at the end, it collectively forms an array and it is stored in this variable. So let me just do it. Console.log names. And now I should have an array of only Avenger names. So that's where map comes in handy. And this is not the only use case, guys. There are a lot of use cases that you will also find out in future. So yep, that's it, guys. I hope you have understood for each, map, and filter. Okay, now in the next session, we'll talk about some more really cool array functions, but these three are one of the most important array functions there is. Okay, if you understand these, your React life, your Node.js life will become a lot easier. So thank you so much, guys. See you in the next part. Okay then, guys, in this particular part, we'll try to understand two more very important array functions that are find and sort. Now we have already seen for each, map, and filter, and I hope you have understood them perfectly because find is exactly similar. So here you can see that I also have a nums array with some numbers, and I have already applied filter on it, right? And in this case, what's happening? It's simply saying return that element on whichever the filter function is currently if that element matches 45. So I hope you remember your previous examples that we have already seen while doing filter. So we know, right, in this case it will simply take this element, return this element, and return this element, and both of them will collectively form an array which will be returned by filter, which will be stored in data. So inside data I should get an array of 245s, right? So let's see that, and here we go. You can see that. Correct? Now, instead of filter, I can also apply find. Now, what is the difference between filter and find? It's very simple that filter goes through the whole array, right, and finds all the matching elements. So filter in this case first goes on 23, doesn't match, leave it. Filter then goes on 45, yes, it matches, so return that element. Then it will again move ahead to 56, 78, and again will find 45. So filter goes through the whole array and finds all the matches that you have mentioned the condition for. But on the other hand, find only works for the first occurrence. So in this example, it goes to 23, doesn't match, leave it. Then it goes to 45, it matches the condition, so it returns that element, and that's it. Find stops. So find only filters out the first occurrence of your condition. Filter goes through the whole array. It can be used to find all the matches, but find only works to find the first occurrence of the condition. That's it. So in this case, it will find 45 and it will simply return that particular element. So find will return the element. It will be stored in data, and we should then get a single number. Here we go, 45. So that's how find works. Now remember, guys, filter finds all the occurrences. That's why filter function returns an array of all the elements that have been returned based on this condition. But find only returns the first occurrence. That's why in your data, you're not getting an array because it's only returning a single element. And that's why you directly get your single element, right? Now I can also apply find on an array of objects like this. So I can simply go ahead and let's call it fAvengers, right? Let me first apply filter so that I can again show you how it works. And let me add one more Avenger in this case. So I can simply go ahead and let's put same 34, but in this case I'm giving the name as Hulk. Now guys, I'm not explaining filter again because we have already seen it perfectly. So but let me again just do it. So Avengers dot filter, if I apply filter in here, I'll get my current element, and then I can simply say return that element if that element. Now since in here the element was a number, so I can directly match it. Now we have already learned this, guys. I'm just trying to revise it a little bit. So in this case the element is a number, so I can directly match it. But in this case the element is an object, so I cannot compare an object, right? I have to access a property if I want to do some kind of comparison. So I have to go ele.age, because ele is this whole object, and then this whole object, and then this whole object. So if ele return the whole element, if ele.age matches, let's say 34. Now in this case I'm damn sure that it's going to match this one and this one, right? So let me just do console.log f avengers, and here we go. You can see you got an array of 2 elements that are 2 objects, right? That's how filter works. We have already seen it. But in the same case, if I apply find again, it will only work for the first occurrence. So it will simply give you this, because this is the first occurrence where age is 34, and it will not move ahead. Find will stop after finding the first occurrence. So in this case you should see that you're getting directly the element. So that's the difference between filter and find. So if you're only planning to find one element, go for find. If you're planning to get all the possible matches, go for filter. Okay, that's the difference. Now let's talk about the next important function, that is sort. Now see guys, if you want, you can write your own sorting algorithm in JavaScript if you know a lot of programming. But again, if you don't want to write that big algorithm and just want to use or just want to sort it very fast, you can use an inbuilt array function called as sort. So let me show you that. So I'm creating a new array here. Let's call it sorted nums, something like that. And I can, whatever array I want to sort, so I want to sort this array, so I can simply call that nums.sort. That's all. Now this nums.sort function will take this array, sort it, and will return a new sorted array that I'm storing in this variable. So in this case, if I just go ahead and do console.log sorted nums, and we should see, here we go. You can see that, right, that array. So initially when I created it, it was 23, 45, 40, 56, 78 random numbers. But now here it is already sorted 12, 23, 45, 45, 56 and 78. But you can see it's sorted in ascending order. So what if I want to do descending? So in that case, guys, the sort function also has a callback function that you can call. In that, you have to pass 2 parameters. First, you can call it A. Second, you can call it B. Now guys, again, these are just parameters. You can call them whatever you want. So this A and B is nothing. It's just the first 2 elements, then the next 2 elements, then the next 2 elements, then the next 2 elements, like that. So if you want to sort it in a descending order, just write return B minus A. So the second element minus first element will give you descending order. And here we go, you can see that. And if you want ascending order, just do normal, A minus B. But again guys, if you just want ascending order, you can completely ignore this callback function, because sort by default sorts in ascending order only, right? But that's how it works, guys. But now it becomes a little more complicated when you actually want to sort something like this. So let's see how to sort something like this. So again, now because this is not an array of numbers, this was an array of numbers, so I can directly apply nums.sort without putting this function. I had to only put the function if I wanted to do descending order. If I want to do ascending, I can simply write like this. But since this is not an array of numbers, this is an array of objects, and because the properties are inside the object that I want to compare, so to sort this, you always have to give the callback function. So let's call it savengers, that is sorted avengers, something like that. And then avengers.sort. See guys, the simple explanation why only avengers.sort will not work, because in this case, if I just do avengers.sort, how it will compare this object with this object? If you want to compare, you need to compare properties, right? You don't compare the whole object. So that's what I'm saying. Because this was numbers, this was possible, because directly these two can get compared. But in this case, these two cannot get compared, right? That's why you always have to pass a function. And then again, A and B. Now remember guys, in here, A and B meant this number and this number.
That means two elements, and then after that these two elements, and then after that these two elements, or whatever is going on inside. In this case, A and B are this element and this element. That means A is also holding whole object, B is also holding whole object, right? So you need to sort, let's say, based on age. So you have to do return. Let's say I want to do ascending. So A dot age minus B dot age, like that. And now let's just log that. So let's say S Avengers, and now let's see if it is sorting. Now in this case, I'm doing A minus B, right? That basically means it's going to be ascending order. Let's see that. And here we go. See, Iron Man came up, then Hulk, then Captain America, then Thor. And if I want descending, I'll simply do B dot age minus A dot age. And that's it. Now I will get descending. So whenever you want descending, it should be B minus A. And whenever you want ascending, it should be A minus B. But again, that depends on what you're writing here. Here also you can write MN, first element, second element, because they are just parameters, guys. You can write whatever you want. Now, I would also like to add one more array function in here, that is something called as findIndex, which is exactly similar to find. It also gives you back the first occurrence, but it doesn't return the element. Let me show you that. Let's comment this out and let's get this whole thing back, right? The find. Now you remember, right? Find gives you the element that it has found, right? But if I, instead of this, do find index, so now what it does is return the element wherever this matches. That's how find works. In find index, return the index of the element where this condition matches. So in this case, on this element, this condition will match. So whatever is the index of this element, in this case it's 0, 1. So it will return 1, and in data I should get 1. That is the index of the element where the condition is matching. And here we go, 1. If I do, let's say 78, I should get 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's see that. Here we go. So guys, that's it from array functions. Thank you so much. Okay guys, in this video, we're going to be talking about something called as a generator function. So what exactly is a generator function? So it's a function that we can use to generate n number of values. Now you might ask, I can also return n number of values by using a normal function, but it is something different. In a normal function, you can return something only once, and that return terminates the function, right? And if you call it again, it will execute everything again and then return to you. A generator function is a special function that remembers what it returned last time, and the next time it returns something else. And you can also mention what you want to return at which time. So you can mention, okay, for the first time return this, for the second time return this, for the third time return this, right? For example, let's say you want to generate IDs. For the first time you want this function to return 1. The next time you want this function to return 2. You can mention all of that return at one place. So don't worry guys, if it is not at all clear the first time, by seeing the example you'll understand how it works. So let me show you. So let's see how to create a generator function in JavaScript. So the first thing that you need is a function keyword. Now remember guys that there is no arrow function alternative for it. You cannot create it using the arrow syntax. So you have to use the function keyword. Now after writing function, put an asterisk, because that is what tells the JavaScript that this is a generator function. Then now call it whatever you want. So let's say generate value, something like that, right? And now inside this, avoid using return keyword, because return will terminate the function. I don't want to terminate this function because I want to return multiple values. So if I don't use the return keyword, then how I'm going to return values? So in that case, you use something called the yield keyword here. Yield is like return. It returns value, but it does not terminate the function. Return keyword terminates the function, ends the function there. Yield does not terminate the function. So if I just do yield 1, that basically means I'm returning 1, but without terminating the function. And next time I can do, let's say, yield 2. Next time I can do yield 3. And in between them, I can write whatever code I want. So now what will happen is, when this function will be called for the first time, it will return 1. So you'll get a value 1, right? And or maybe whatever execution you have done on top of it and this yield. Now next time when you call this function again, it will directly start from or after this yield. It will ignore all the code
before this yield and this. So let's say you have some code here, right? And let's say you have some code here as well, like this. So when you call it for the first time, it will run this code, and wherever you yield, it will stop there. So the function is suspended. Guys, understand it's not terminated, because if it is terminated, so when you call it again, it will start from start. It doesn't happen in this. When the first time you call it, it executes this code, yields 1, right? And it goes in the suspension state. Now next time when you call it, it will ignore the things that it has already executed, and it will directly start from the new part. So basically, it is like suspending and resuming. Now next time when you call it, it will ignore all of this, because this yield and this yield are already done, and it will start from whatever is after that yield. So whatever code is here and all that stuff, right? So now let me give you some example first. So let's only try yield for now. So you can see it is yielding 3 values. So let's see how to use it now. So the first thing you have to do is you have to create an object. So let's just call it gen, something like that, and then call that function. So generate value. Now after calling this function, this generate value returns an object which is stored inside gen. And now that object can be used to get all these values. So let me show you how to do it. So you have to do console.log, or you can do whatever you want. I'm just printing it right now. So gen, the object, dot next, it will go to the first yield. This gen.next will call the first yield, or it will execute the code that is written on top until first yield. It will execute all of this. Now understand, guys, it will execute the code which starts from start until first yield. For example, let me show you, or let me just show you without code first. So if I just do gen.next.value, you'll see that you're gonna get 1. You can see that, right? You're getting 1. That means the output of the first yield. Now if I just write the same thing again, I should get the second yield output. So this line will give me the first yield output. This line will give me the second yield output. So now in this case, you will see I'm going to get 2. And now when I go back here again, and if I write it again, I should get 3 in this case. So let's just go, and here we go. You can see 3. So that's how it works, guys. Gen, the object dot next dot value, it will call the first yield. Now it is not only calling the yield. If I, let's say, have some code here, for example, let a equals 23 plus 45, something like this. So let's say this is some big short code right now, and this is your first yield. And let's say here I have also some code. So let b equals 45 plus 45, something like that. And then let's say I'm doing some calculation here as well. Let c equals 56 plus 56, something like that. And instead of 1, I'm returning a, or yielding a. Instead of 2, I'm returning b. And instead of 3, I'm returning c. So now what will happen is, see, so when you call this gen.next.value the first time, it will execute all the code from start till this yield. Understand, guys? Till this yield. Okay? So whatever it is returning, you'll get it here, right? And when you call it the next time, it will start from the ending of this yield. So whatever is after this yield, from there till this yield. And then when you call it the next time, it will again start from the last yield. So last yield is done, and from or after that yield. So that's how it works. Okay, so the first one will go till this yield. The next one will start from after that yield till the next yield. And the last time you call it, it will start from after that yield till the next yield. So that's how it works. Now in this case, you will again see you're getting your output 68, 90, and 112. So that's how it works, guys. Now let's say you want to check sometime that are all the yields done or not. So in that case, you have a function that you can, or a property that you can access. So again, call gen.next. Now inside this, if I just do value again, you'll see that this first one is getting this, the second one is getting this third one is getting this. That means there is nothing for the fourth one, right? So in this case, we should definitely get undefined, because there's no yield for that. So there's no value for that, right? But if I don't want to access value, if I just want to check that are all the yields done, so just call done. And now in this case, you will see it will give me true. That means yes, all the yields are complete. But if I do it in between somewhere, let's say I do it here where nothing is complete yet, right? I have only got the first yield answer or the value. I have not accessed the second yield or third yield, and I'm trying to check are all the yields done. So in this case, you'll see I get false. And see, now I don't get this B is output. Why? Because this gen.next is calling this yield, and I'm not checking the value, I'm just checking if it is done. So there we go, I get false because all the yields are not complete. But because the next is called, this yield is called. And that's why in the next gen.next, I get this yield, and this one gives me undefined. So guys, that's how it works. Now let me show you. Let's say you just want to generate some incremented value, what you can do in this case, right? So let me create a function, one more generator function. Let's say I want to generate IDs like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for my random objects. So I can just go here and let's create a function. So function, let's call it, again, don't forget the asterisk, guys. Let's call it gen ID. That means generate IDs, right? And now here I say let start equals 0 or maybe 1, right? Something like that. Okay, or you can just say 0. Let's say I am saying 0 because I'm going to be incrementing few things. So now you can just apply a while loop so that it happens again and again, so that you don't have to worry about it. So while, let's just call it true. That means I'm directly putting condition as true. Or basically I think you don't have to do it. Even if you don't do it, it will still work. But no, you have to keep it while, because it will not start from there, right? It always starts from the next yield. Remember that, guys? When you call it for the first time, it will execute this, and the next time it will start from after this. So it will ignore the first line of code. So if you don't want to ignore it, you have to use a while loop so that it continues back, right? Loop always repeats itself. Don't forget the loop lecture that we have learned. Loop always repeats itself. So here we're going to make use of that. So I'm directly making condition true. That means it will be always true. No, it's never going to be false. So you have to always work. And then I'll just put yield, let's say plus plus start. Why plus plus start? Because if I do start plus plus, then operation will happen first and then increment will happen. I want the increment to happen first. So now in this case, guys, what will happen? Now if I just go ahead and call, okay, first I need to create the object. So let gid equals gen id, I call that. And now let's try to understand what's happening here. So if I do gid dot next dot, okay, next is a function, dot value, now you'll see I should get 1 initially. So let me see. And here we go, you get 1, right? Now how it is working, guys, let's try to understand that. So when you call this, initially this executes. So start becomes 0. Fine then. While true. Yes, obviously condition is true. Now I'm saying yield plus plus start, that is plus plus 0, that is 1. So yield 1, right? So now the execution ends here. The first execution ends here. It has ended. Now when you call it again, as I said, guys, when you call it again, it starts from where it ended last time. So remember, guys, last time it ended on this line. So basically next time it starts from after this. Now when it starts from after, it understands, okay, fine, I'm actually inside a loop. So if I'm inside a loop, I have to go back up to check the condition, because I can't exit if the condition is true. So now again check the condition. Okay, fine, it's true again. Then yield. And now this time it will be plus plus 1, because last time it was 0. But we incremented with 1. So now it will yield 2. And then after yielding, it will again end. Right? See, it is still not outside the loop. It has just ended the execution here. Or you can say suspended the execution here. It is not outside the loop. So if I call it again now, it will start from here. And then it will find out, okay, I'm still inside the loop. So let's go back up. Again, it's true. So now plus plus whatever the start was last time. So it will become 3, then 4. Remember that, guys, this is only getting executed once because I'm inside the loop. So loop is continuing. I'm not going back up here. That's why it is 0 only for the first time. After that, it's just incrementing. And now, no matter how many times you call it, it will just keep generating IDs for you. So you can see 1, 2, 3. So if I just call it again, it will just go for 4, 5, 6, and just like that. So guys, this is one use of it. You can make a lot of use of it if you do a little bit research and study more about it. So I hope you have understood generator functions, guys. So that's it from this part. Thank you so much. See you in the next part. And that's it from the course, guys. Thank you so much all for watching. Please like the video and share it to people who want to learn JavaScript. Please subscribe and help me grow, and also press the bell icon because I'm coming up with a complete DOM manipulation course, and also I'm coming up with a complete asynchronous JavaScript course. So if you want to get notified about them, please press the bell icon for my future videos, and also let me know in the comments which new project session or which kind of complete tutorials you want, so that I can get an idea about it and I will make them as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Have a great year ahead.